UK.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello, good morning. 6 o'clock on Monday, the 13th of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with me, Simon McCoy, and Rosie Wright.
1 million jabs a day, with the army called in to help. That's the promise from Prime Minister Boris Johnson as he warns of a tidal wave of the Omicron variant of coronavirus. He says we face an emergency with the NHS on its knees. Not everyone agrees. How safe do you feel? You can email us, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
The Cabinet Secretary will investigate whether the Prime Minister broke the law by hosting a quiz night during lockdown. Are you over this Downing Street Christmas party scandal?
Now, the travel red list could apparently be scrapped as early as this week. We'll explain why the Transport Secretary is to thank for the expected change.
Fish and chips. Relations between the UK and France hit a new low as French fishermen apparently planned several blockades in Calais and other key ports over a lack of licences. It'll ruin Christmas for many Brits, but do they care? gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let us know.
And heartbreak for Hamilton. Max Verstappen is crowned Formula One World Champion ahead of Lewis Hamilton after 2 appeals from Mercedes are rejected following the Dutchman's thrilling last lap victory at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Did you watch the race?
I didn't, but I know you certainly did.
I said something on Twitter about, they all worked the same rules. Oh, my word. I mean, I get a lot of stuff.
It was a pile-on.
Yes, it was. People very upset about it. Some people pleased about it. But there we are. I'm saying no more. Let's give you a look at some of the front pages this morning. The Metro reports on a record 530,086 boosters being given in one day amid concerns about the Omicron variant.
The Guardian leads with Boris Johnson's gamble, they'd call it, on 1 million booster jabs a day to tackle the Omicron variant.
The Daily Telegraph leads with the Prime Minister's plans to offer 1 million booster jabs a day to ward off another lockdown.
The Daily Mail's top story is Boris Johnson's ambition to give 18 million people a booster jab by the end of the year.
Plans to offer every adult a booster jab by the end of the month are the Sun's top story.
Boris Johnson's warning of a tidal wave of the Omicron variant is on the front page of The Times, along with his promise to offer all adults a booster jab by the end of the month.
The Daily Express puts the national mission to deliver boosters on its front page.
The Daily Mirror echoes Boris Johnson, who's urged all adults to get a COVID booster jab amid fears the Omicron variant will lead to many deaths.
Vicious jackals are posing one of the biggest threats to British livestock ever known. That's according to the Daily Star this morning.
So the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, it was in a press briefing that he gave last night, declared Omicron an emergency, just hours after the UK COVID alert was raised to level 4. In an address last night, he said it was clear the 2 doses of the vaccine are simply not enough to combat the new variant and urged all adults to get a 3rd dose.
We're a great country. We have the vaccines to protect our people. So let's do it. Let's get boosted now. Get boosted now for yourself, for your friends and your family. Get boosted now to protect jobs and livelihoods across this country. Get boosted now to protect our NHS, our freedoms and our way of life.
Booster jabs will be offered to everyone over 18 in England from this week. The target is to have everyone who wants an extra vaccination jabbed by the new year.
Well, to discuss this boost to the booster rollout is Georgia Kahali, reporter at politics.co.uk. Georgia, a very good morning to you. What do you think about this 18 million jabs? The concern for some people is that some of our other health services will have to be sacrificed somewhat to try and get this done.
Absolutely. If you're trying to offer this booster jab to millions and millions of people by the end of the year, other things are obviously going to suffer. And we have actually seen, explicitly GPs be incentivised with bonuses, basically, I think it's £20-30, to get people jabbed. And I'm assuming this is also going to be the case going forward with the booster jab for younger people. And it doesn't really make sense to me when we have a backlog of appointments of around 6 million, which is going up 100,000 a month. People needing checkups, people needing cancer screenings, that kind of stuff that already fell behind during lockdown, to focus on getting, young people my age who, let's face it, are at a very, very low risk when it comes to COVID. And also, when it comes to this new variant, to be focusing on that rather than trying to tackle the massive issues that the NHS has going into the winter already.
And of course, tomorrow, the Prime Minister faces a possible huge rebellion of his own MPs, with Labour ensuring it will go through his proposals for Plan B. But he's under pressure still, isn't he?
He's under pressure. I think it's more of an internal party matter, though, because as you're saying, Labour are going to vote for this. I don't believe any Labour MPs have explicitly said that they'll vote against it. And most of them are, of course, going to be whipped to vote for it. And most of them will be in favour of it anyway. And we're having reports of about 60 Tory MPs who are going to rebel. Obviously not enough to sway it, given that Tories have an 80-seat majority and Labour will be voting for it. So it comes across as the government looking feeble, being able to, or rather not able to, control its own MPs, control its own ranks, rather than them being, not able to get the legislation through, which it will anyway. And I think that this is something that, depending on what happens, obviously, could sort of go forward into the next election, really affect the government's image. And obviously, it's not the first time in the last few days even that the government has sort of looked weak, looked feeble.
I mean, we're talking about the government's image. There's this now awkward set of answers that will be demanded of Boris Johnson at this Christmas quiz, sitting beside two colleagues. How do you think this part of the story is going to play out? What impacts it going to have?
Yeah, I think it depends, because sort of reviewing the responses over the last few days, I think this image in particular has divided people a lot. I think there are people who sort of think, okay, he's only saying that to two people who he works with, so is it that big of a deal? But also, when we saw these revelations, even prior to this photo last week, the allegations of other parties at Downing Street involving ministers, involving the Prime Minister and aides, over 50% of people told pollsters that they thought Boris Johnson should resign over it. So I think that this image certainly isn't going to make matters easier for him, whether or not you think this image is sort of the most damning thing out of all the allegations. And I think, come on, this picture, like I'm saying, it's not the most damning thing out of everything that's been said, everything that's happened in the past few days, past few weeks, but it does breach rules, whether or not you agreed with the rules in the first place or you agree with them now. I think it's a scandal, really, that the Prime Minister can obviously be seen breaking these rules that other people were expected legally to follow. Other people, have faced fines of tens of thousands of pounds for doing such things. And it just comes across as, one rule for them, one rule for us. And I think this definitely is an issue that is going to go forward into the next election.
OK, now let's talk about some awkward people, the French. The fishing dispute and the threat to blockade Calais and other ports just before Christmas. Britain has been handing out more licences than British trawlers are happy with, so that there's an attempt at compromise here. But what's going on?
Absolutely. I think, obviously, a bit of a loaded headline from The Telegraph. I think, obviously, there are two sides to this, and I think that probably those French fishermen, whatever we think of the legal situation, I don't know whether they're thinking, I just hate these British people. I want to ruin their Christmas. Probably, they just would like to continue operating those waters, continue fishing there, whether or not that's viable or not. We have seen the governments of Jersey, we've seen the British government grant scores of licenses to these vessels over the past 6 months, I believe. And basically the government's dividing line is we're going to accept vessels that have the technology on them that can show that they've been operating in those waters pre-Brexit, so we can allow them to do it going forward. Some of these boats don't have that tech to be able to prove that. So the government is basically saying, well, if you don't have proof, you can't get the licenses. So if you're a French fisherman, that's not a barrel of laughs for you. So I can understand why they're protesting. However, if you're the British government or the government of Jersey, how else can you prove that? There may be no way to do so. It depends on a case-by-case basis, though the UK government, the governments of the Channel Islands have said that they'll continue to accept evidence whenever. So, hopefully more of them can get licenses, but if they can't prove it, you can understand why the government can't do it. Whether or not this blockade will cause that amount of chaos, I mean, we have seen protests of this kind before in the past few weeks, but it was on a very temporary basis. I think it was a few hours in a morning a few Fridays ago. But if it was sort of extended very, very close to Christmas, it could, definitely cause more hassle than the previous protests have.
Yeah, very Merry Christmas. Always good to see you. Georgia, thank you very much for your time this morning. Good to see you.
It's 10 minutes past 6. Let's give you an overview of what else is happening today, this Monday morning. The red list will reportedly be scrapped as soon as this week. Well, it's according to the Mail on Sunday. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, convinced his colleagues it should be replaced for testing for the fully vaccinated. The return of the red list 2 weeks ago was met with widespread criticism, with travellers, of course, they're needing to quarantine at a hotel at a cost of over £2,200 per person for 10 days.
The Welsh Health Minister says new restrictions will likely be imposed in the next few weeks to help deal with the Omicron variant. Ed Morgan says the government wants to act proportionately, but a spike in cases is expected quickly. It comes as First Minister Mark Drakeford warned Omicron could lead to large numbers of people in hospital.
Northern Ireland's COVID certification scheme is set to become legally enforceable from today. It requires people to prove COVID status to gain entry to a range of hospitality venues and large events, and it was introduced last month with a 2-week grace period. Well, anyone wishing to access a nightclub, pub, restaurant and other licensed premises will now need to show proof of vaccination or a negative lateral flow test result.
Officers investigating the disappearance of a nursing assistant have found a body in a South London park. 32-year-old Petra Sunkova went missing on November the 28th on her way home from the Children's Hospital where she worked. Formal identification hasn't yet taken place, but her family has been informed. A man arrested in connection with her disappearance has been released on bail pending further inquiries.
The Kentucky governor says morgues in the US town of Mayfield are struggling to keep up with victims. It's after a series of powerful tornadoes ripped through the state. More than 100 people are feared dead across 6 states, and at least 80 were killed in Kentucky in what's been described one of the largest tornado outbreaks in US history.
The government will spend £510 million starting in the new financial year to tackle record levels of benefit fraud. A record £8.4 billion was lost last year, mainly because of overpayments on the Universal Credit Benefit and fraud, according to official figures. The new cash will allow the Department for Work and Pensions to recruit about 2,000 fraud investigators.
In the sport, Formula One officials have rejected 2 protests from Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes team after Max Verstappen won a dramatic Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The result secured the Dutchman's first World Championship. Hamilton had led from the start, but Red Bull's Verstappen was able to overtake him in the final lap. Mercedes intends to appeal the verdict.
Entertainment news, Emmerdale actor Danny Miller has been crowned the winner of ITV's I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He beat fellow finalists, actor Simon Gregson and the singer Frankie Bridge, to be crowned the King of the Castle. Miller described winning as the best thing that's ever happened to me, other than the birth of his son Albert 3 weeks before the show began.
And the weather today. It's going to be...
Other... Really?
I wonder what his other half says about that. The weather. Today's going to be cloudy in the south, persistent outbreaks of rain in Wales and the Midlands. The north will stay drier with sunny spells and a few showers in the west. It is feeling mild.
That was the best weather forecaster I've ever heard since the one on the 10 o'clock last night. Right, now, new Azuma train services launched this morning between Middlesbrough and London. It's a type of train, it's not a disease. London North Eastern Railway, or LNER, says this is the first wave of new services between Teesside and London. The very first train is just about to leave the station. Our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney is live at Middlesbrough train station for us right now. Just how big a deal is this?
This is huge for the North East of England, especially Middlesbrough. For the first time in 30 years, a direct service from Middlesbrough to the capital. It is hugely important for us to be connected to London because of the record investments we've seen in this area, huge global business deals. This is only going to make us more attractive to more businesses, more growth and more development. Now, joining me now is the Managing Director of LNER. Thank you for joining us this morning. How much do you think this means to the people here?
Oh, we know it means a huge amount already. Even before the service has started, we've had many messages from people asking about the service, talking about when is it going to start. And it's been several years in the making, but here today, this morning, we are launching this brand new service with one of our brand new Azuma trains that were built in the North East as well. And we're just delighted to be welcoming people aboard for the first time.
We have to ask, why do you think it's taken so long? Because, people have been asking for this for a long time. Is it because there's now a government department coming to this area?
Well, the case for the service is improving all the time with the investment and the real shift towards relocation towards the north, of course. Physically, there have been works taking place at the station to accommodate the new service. And of course, it's taken a while for us to get our Azuma trains into full service. The Mayor has made investment of over £22 million into the station to enable this service to start.
It's in the government's interest now, isn't it, to really pay attention to this part of the world. It's really up and coming, there's so much investment, and now, of course, the Treasury.
Yes, indeed. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the Tees Valley and on the broader North East, of course. The case is really strong. There's parts of the country that are overheating in terms of the economy, so this is about rebalancing activity, but it's also, of course, about fundamentally providing a better service by train that's environmentally friendly, that enables people to connect between the towns and the cities across the country.
Mr. Horn, thank you so much. Now, the first train is about to depart at 7:08. We'll be here to watch it go, and we'll have more throughout the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Sweeney there. Back to her at 7 minutes past.
Now it's just gone 6:15. Coming up here on the programme, we'll tell you about the driver licence backlog facing the UK after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
And looking ahead to today for the UK, it's looking mild but cloudy in the south. However, in the north, brighter with showers. Let's have a look at what's happening in detail. Let's go to the southwest of England. It's going to be rather cloudy as we head towards lunchtime with some patchy drizzle over the hills. It'll be very mild, though, with temperatures in the low teens. Moving further east towards southeast England and East Anglia, we're likely to see a few breaks in the cloud, allowing some sunny interludes to develop. In Wales, however, it's going to be a rather wet day, with the rain turning heavy and persistent at times, especially across the northwest of the country. The wet weather will also affect northern parts of the Midlands, but further south, it will be drier with perhaps a few breaks developing during the afternoon. It'll feel mild with temperatures reaching 13 Celsius. To northern England, it's going to start the day largely dry and bright, but the band of rain will gradually spread northwards during the day, although the far north may stay dry until after dark. Scotland is going to see a day of sunny spells and blustery showers. However, after a very windy start in the north, winds will gradually ease as the day goes on. And moving across to Northern Ireland, it's where we'll see the best of the sunshine today with just the odd shower possible. Temperatures there reaching 8 Celsius. So it's going to remain largely dry across the south as we head towards dusk, with the band of rain only slowly moving north. That's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back, 21 minutes past 6. You're watching the Great British Breakfast with Simon and Rosie. Now, more than 500,000 learner drivers are waiting to take their test because of a huge backlog. For large parts of the pandemic, learners were banned from getting their driving qualification. Well, now the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency is being criticised for not doing more to reduce the long queue to test centres.
Let's find out more. Will Hollis is our East Midlands reporter and joins us live from a test centre in Loughborough. Will, tell us what's going on. Lots of people, I'm sure, very anxious to get behind the wheel.
Good morning. Yeah, as you say, people are very anxious to get behind the wheel. It's certainly one of the more anxious times of learning to drive. If you remember those first few lessons that a learner driver might take, they're always pretty worrying. The next worrying time is probably when you actually go to take your test 6 months or a year down the line. Now, this has been a persistent problem in the later days of the pandemic, since about April time, when tests were reintroduced after that period of a lockdown when they'd been banned for so long. The statistics are retrieved from the DVSA, the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, by AA Driving School. More than 500,000 people currently waiting to take their test. It's around half a year that some people are waiting, 24 weeks before they can do that. The managing director of AA Driving School, who's quoted in the release about this, said that driving instructors have adapted to make their lessons better, to make more lessons available, even when restrictions have been lifted, but the DVSA has still not caught up enough to meet the demand, and questions need to be asked about what support they can get to ensure they don't end up in the same position if restrictions are reintroduced. It's certainly a worrying time for the people that are wanting to take their tests, but it's a difficult position for examiners as well. Now, the DVSA has said that they are putting measures in place, offering weekend and bank holiday testing and recruiting more examiners. While I've been researching this story, I've spoken to a few test instructors who say that one of the main problems is that while the DVSA is making more of these slots available for testing on places like the weekends, like the bank holidays, there simply aren't enough instructors, examiners, or cars available. Most people that do their tests will do it in the car that they learned in. But with more and more people, a year's worth of backlog wanting to learn how to drive, the cars simply aren't available for people to take the test. Now, I do have a quote here from the DVSA, the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency. It's from the Chief Executive, who says, we are doing all we can to provide as many tests as possible so we can get our services back to normal. With more than half of candidates failing and demand currently extremely high for tests, learners should only take their test when they are confident they can pass. So it's a difficult period. It's around half of people currently taking their tests that are failing. Half of them are passing, which is in fact better than it has been in the last 5-year period because of this encouragement to only take it when you're ready. I think most people, though, they wouldn't even bother taking a test if they weren't ready. But we know what it's like when you actually get onto that test. It can be extremely difficult and extremely worrying, and sometimes a simple small mistake can be the thing that costs you that test.
Indeed so. We'll be back to you later. Thank you very much for that update. Will Hollis.
25 minutes past 6. Let's give you an overview of what else is happening today. Now, the travel red list is reportedly going to be scrapped as soon as this week. It's according to the Mail on Sunday. They say the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, convinced his colleagues it should be replaced with testing for the fully vaccinated. The return of the red list 2 weeks ago has met with widespread criticism, with travellers needing then to quarantine at a hotel for 10 days at a cost of £2,285.
The Welsh Health Minister says new restrictions will likely be imposed in the next few weeks there to help deal with the Omicron variant. Ellen Morgan says the government wants to act proportionately, but a spike in cases is expected quickly. It comes as First Minister Mark Drakeford warned Omicron could lead to large numbers of people in hospital.
Northern Ireland's COVID certification scheme is set to become legally enforceable from today. The scheme requires people to prove COVID status to gain entry to a range of hospitality venues and large events. It was introduced last month, but there was a 2-week grace period. So patrons wishing to access nightclubs, pubs, restaurants and other licensed premises will need to provide proof of vaccination or a negative lateral flow test results.
Officers investigating the disappearance of a nursing assistant have found a body in a South London park. 32-year-old Petra Sankova went missing on November the 28th on her way home from the Children's Hospital where she worked. Formal identification has not yet taken place, but her family has been informed. A man arrested in connection with her disappearance has been released on bail pending further inquiries.
The Kentucky governor says morgues in the US town of Mayfield, they're struggling to keep up with victims. This after a series of powerful tornadoes ripped through the state. More than 100 people are feared dead across 6 states. At least 80 were killed in Kentucky in what's been described one of the largest tornado outbreaks in US history.
Some MPs are calling on the government to rethink its plans to require voters to show photo ID at polling stations. The Commons Constitutional Affairs Committee says the move is likely to reduce turnout and make it more difficult to vote, and should not move ahead without further research into how it'll affect different groups. But the government says the move is necessary to protect elections from potential voter fraud.
The government's going to spend £510 million starting the new financial year to try to tackle record levels of benefit fraud. Well, a record £8.4 billion was lost last year, mainly because of overpayments on the universal credit benefit and fraud. Official figures show this. The new cash will allow the Department for Work and Pensions to recruit about 2,000 fraud investigators.
Royal Mail has confirmed that absence levels are almost double those seen in 2018 before the coronavirus pandemic, but insists deliveries are operating as normal across most of England. However, a source with close knowledge of its operations told the BBC that the internal situation is horrific due to sickness and increased demand in the run-up to Christmas. Royal Mail says 21 offices listed are experiencing delays out of 1,200 delivery offices. But that insider says there are wider issues, adding there are problems and backlogs across the country.
Let's take a quick look at the sport. Formula One officials have rejected 2 protests from Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes team after Max Verstappen won a dramatic Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The result secured the Dutchman's first World Championship. Hamilton had the lead from the start, but the Red Bull's Verstappen was able to overtake him in the final lap. Mercedes intends to appeal the verdict.
Entertainment news. Emmerdale actor Danny Miller has been crowned the winner of ITV's I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He beat fellow finalists actor Simon Gregson and singer Frankie Bridge to be crowned the King of the Castle. Miller described winning as the best thing that's ever happened to me, other than the birth of his son Albert 3 weeks before the show began.
What about
quickly added to save his marriage.
Weather. I still can't believe it. Weather today will be...
What can't you believe that he said that?
Do you think he said it because it was just it was an easy thing to say, and then afterwards thought, do I actually mean that?
I think that's the best thing to ever happen to me, and then you realise that you're leaving and you're walking into the arms of someone who might not be best pleased you said it, is how I would read that.
The weather today. It's going to be cloudy in the south with persistent outbreaks of rain in Wales and the Midlands. The north will stay dry with sunny spells and a few showers in the west, and it's feeling mild.
Coming up, Zut alors, your Christmas baby ruined by French fishermen. We'll explain why after this.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back to the programme at 6:32. Now, the government's new work from home mandate, maybe you can work from home, begins from today. It comes as the Plan B regulations are laid before MPs today, with it looking increasingly likely that Boris Johnson will have to rely on Labour to get through the vote tomorrow. So what is the latest as the Omicron variant continues to spread across the country? Well, here to tell us more is our Yorkshire and Humber reporter, Kevin Larkin, who's at the Advanced Manufacturing Park in Rotherham. Kevin, very good morning to you. So working from home, if you can, that starts today. What kind of impacts is that going to have in Yorkshire?
Yes, good morning, Rosie. Yeah, not as much as you would think. From the reports, you think virtually everybody works from home. Actually, according to the Office for National Statistics data from April 2020, which is the most recent data that we have, only 47% of people across the UK were able to do any work at home, which of course means 53% weren't. And here in Yorkshire and the Humber, we had the second lowest levels of working from home in the whole country. Here in Yorkshire, only 37% of people were able to do any working from home. Now, that's put down to the fact that we have fewer office jobs up here in Yorkshire, far more manufacturing, and of course more people in key worker positions as well. So potentially the flip side of this is that it means these measures which are being brought in to mitigate the impact of the Omicron variant might actually have less effect here, and so we might see more of a spread. We saw that in the last wave when many businesses which had to stay open saw outbreaks. We saw outbreaks at companies including meat processing firms, bed factories, where you're working in very close proximity. So of course the concern will be that because these mitigations don't apply to as many people up here, we could see a faster spread of the Omicron variant up here in Yorkshire.
Kevin, good morning to you. It's Simon McCoy here. I'm working alongside Rosie this morning. I was totally ignored earlier by him. He just said, good morning, Rosie. Sorry. Anyway, Kevin, what does this mean about the manufacturing sector? Is it likely to continue as normal? How does this pan out?
Well, Simon, I was just waiting for you to say good morning to me directly, so good morning to you as well. There was no snub intended, I can assure you of that. You asked me about manufacturing. So yes, most manufacturing will still be running during these new Plan B rules. A new survey out this morning from Make UK, the manufacturing group, suggests the sector is actually doing very well at the moment. Total manufacturing orders here in Yorkshire have increased by 38%, and historically that is a very strong increase on what we've seen in the past. It's being put down to the reopening of the food and drink sector, and also a strong demand for steel. Now, where I am at the moment on the border of Rotherham and Sheffield, this is very much steel country, and we are seeing a lot of demand for steel in this area. It's due to the new infrastructure projects, not only here in the UK, but also around the world. But there are concerns in this Make UK survey about cost pressures, that this increase of demand that we're seeing since the pandemic eased up is actually increasing prices and wages and the costs of raw materials and so on. So it is pushing up prices. However, the survey did seem pretty positive about the manufacturing sector going into 2022 as well.
Kevin, a lot of these measures, of course, have been put in place to try and mitigate against the impact of the Omicron variant. What's the data actually telling us about the spread of this new strain?
Well, Rosie, we got some updates from the UK Health Security Agency last night. They said that there were 1,239 new Omicron cases in the UK yesterday. Now, that, interestingly, makes up 4 in 10 of the total number we've seen of Omicron cases in the UK, which now numbers 3,137. But it's important to note that Omicron is still a small proportion of the total number of COVID cases. Yesterday, the total number of coronavirus cases of all variants was 48,854. So Omicron makes up around 1 in 16 cases nationally. Of course, we are seeing spikes in areas like London where Omicron has got more established. But in terms of the feed through of this, obviously there's a lot of people saying that actually Omicron is more mild and it doesn't necessarily impact. So in terms of the number of patients admitted to hospital yesterday, that still seems comparatively low. 839 people were admitted to hospital around the country with coronavirus yesterday, but that is the highest level for a month. But you then compare that to the peak that we saw last January of over 4,000, and you get a bit of context there. Similarly, with the number of deaths within 28 days of a positive COVID test, that's also still comparatively low. The last complete data from the 5th of December shows 107 deaths. Again, that's much lower than the 1,300 that we saw one day last January. And the problem is that these are what they call lagging indicators. So the cases go up first, then you see the problems with the hospitalisations, then you see the death rate go up, which explains why we saw that change of putting the alert level up to level 4. And this is what the government and scientists are concerned about, that we're starting to see this exponential rise in cases, and that very shortly that will feed through to hospitalisations and sadly deaths as well.
And of course, the first test of Plan B and the plans for that come tomorrow in the House of Commons and on Boris Johnson's own backbenches.
Absolutely. Now, many Conservative MPs say they still want to wait until we know how damaging the Omicron variant is, and we have some more facts in front of us. They point at those statistics about the lower hospitalisations and deaths and say now is not the time to be bringing in more restrictions. As of last night, 67 Conservatives have confirmed they will be voting against the plans. Now, that means the government will have to rely on Labour to get these Plan B measures through. That includes bringing in COVID passports for the first time in England through the Commons. Labour have said they'll back it, so it's not really a question of whether these plans will get through, it's just that they will get through and how much Conservatives rebel against the Prime Minister's plans. So the plans will go through, but it may come at a high price for the Prime Minister's relationship with his own party.
Kevin, always good to see you, particularly when you're outside in the cold. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Back to him later on.
Now it's coming up to 20 to 7. Let's give you an overview of what else is happening. And potentially good news for travel. The red list could be scrapped as soon as this week. Well, it's according to the Mail on Sunday. The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, has convinced his colleagues it should be replaced instead with testing for the fully vaccinated. The return of the red list 2 weeks ago has met with widespread criticism, with travellers needing to quarantine in a hotel for 10 days at a cost of £2,285 per person.
The Welsh Health Minister says new restrictions will likely be imposed in the next few weeks to help deal with the Omicron variant there. Ellen Ed Morgan says the government wants to act proportionately, but a spike in cases is expected quickly. It comes as First Minister Mark Drayford warned Omicron could lead to large numbers of people in hospital.
Northern Ireland's COVID certification scheme is set to become legally enforceable today. The scheme requires people to prove their COVID status before they gain entry to a range of hospitality venues and large events. The scheme was introduced last month, but there was a 2-week grace period, and anyone now wishing to access a nightclub, pub, restaurant, other licensed premises will need to provide proof of vaccination or a negative lateral flow result.
Officers investigating the disappearance of a nursing assistant have found a body in a South London park. 32-year-old Petra Sankova went missing on November the 28th on her way home from the Children's Hospital where she worked. Formal identification has not yet taken place, but her family have been informed. A man arrested in connection with her disappearance has been released on bail pending further inquiries.
In America, the Kentucky governor says morgues in the US town of Mayfield are struggling to keep up with the number of victims. It's after a series of powerful tornadoes ripped through the state. More than 100 people are feared dead across 6 states, and at least 80 were killed in Kentucky in what's been described as one of the largest tornado outbreaks in US history.
Some MPs are calling on the government to rethink its plans to require voters to show photo ID at polling stations. The Commons Constitutional Affairs Committee says the move is likely to reduce turnout and make it more difficult to vote and should not move ahead without further research into how it'll affect different groups. But the government says the move is necessary to protect elections from potential voter fraud.
The government's going to spend over £500 million in the new financial year to try to tackle record levels of benefit fraud. A record £8.4 billion was lost last year, mainly because of overpayments on the universal credit benefit and fraud, official figures show. Now, the new cash will allow the Department of Work for Pensions to recruit around 2,000 fraud investigators.
Entertainment news, Emmerdale actor Danny Miller has been crowned the winner of ITV's I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He beat fellow finalists actor Simon Gregson and the singer Frankie Bridge to be crowned the King of the Castle. Miller described winning as the best thing that's ever happened to me, other than the birth of his son Albert, 3 weeks before the show began.
Now, French fishermen are planning to carry out a blockade of crucial ports in a bid to try to spoil Christmas for millions of us Brits. The planned blockade would disrupt our already fairly weak supply chain in the busy festive season. It's the latest move in what's been a very long-running dispute between the UK and France over fishing licences. The French feel entitled to the same pre-Brexit fishing rights in the UK waters that they're now being denied. Previous moves from the French include a threat to cut off power to the UK Channel Islands.
Dr. John Coulter is a political commentator and joins us now. Misery caused by the French. I mean, it's not new necessarily, but this is another way of doing it.
Well, firstly, good morning, Simon, and good morning, Rosie. I have to say, in all honesty, this move by the French is deeply offensive. I mean, it's only less than, say, about a month since we in the United Kingdom commemorated Remembrance Sunday and Armistice Day. I didn't hear the French complaining too much in 1914 or about 1944 when British arrived there was no blockades in France then, when we British arrived there to liberate France from the Germans on that aspect. So I think from that point of view, this is a major diplomatic row, and we need a full-scale apology from President Macron. In fact, we have to see the bigger picture whenever we're looking at this situation. President Macron is facing a very serious presidential threat from the far right. So he needs to pull some kind of magic rabbit out of the hat. And using his French fishermen to have a go at us Brits is an ideal way that he can do it. We've also got to look at it in the major European picture of things. And what I mean by that is this Brussels trying to open a second front against us in the UK because of Brexit? We've already got Brussels opening the first front here in Northern Ireland with the ridiculous protocol that is causing havoc. It is causing chaos. And now we have a situation where it seems a second front is being opened by the European Union. So I think that Brussels needs to come clear. And does it have its hands over pushing President Macron to do this against us and try and ruin Christmas?
Is there a neat resolution to this?
Yes, there is. I think that basically in terms of Boris Johnson, he's taken a lot of hits recently in terms of sleaze and his car crash interview with the CBI and, of course, Partygate. He needs some big hit, a big public relations coup to be able to gain credibility that he's really in control of the country. So what I would be saying to Boris Johnson is the next time he stands up in the House of Commons, he should tell the French in no uncertain terms that if they go ahead with this plan to blockade ports and stop stuff coming in and stop stuff coming to the United Kingdom, then we have no alternative but to send the Royal Navy into the English Channel, and any French fishing boat should be boarded and impounded and dragged back to Plymouth or to Portsmouth. Boris Johnson's very good at saying that he is supports Churchill and sees himself as a modern-day Churchill. My advice to Boris Johnson, remember Trafalgar in 1805 when the Royal Navy obliterated the Franco-Spanish fleet. What Boris Johnson needs to do is to rekindle the spirit of Lord Nelson. And I think if he does that in terms of PR, he will settle the backbenches, he will settle the country, and he will show that he is a Prime Minister that is in leadership. This is a demand for action.
Really? I mean,
yes.
Really?
Let's face it, Simon. Boris Johnson is up against the wall. And I would say he's got 3 days to really implement this plan and really let the French know. Because let's not forget, on Thursday, we have the very, very important North Shropshire by-election. Now, North Shropshire has been a true blue Tory hold for many, many years. Majority of nearly 23,000. And given all the flack that is going the Prime Minister's way, there's the real danger that North Shropshire could turn into a referendum on Boris Johnson's premiership. So he needs a massive PR coup to be able to save North Shropshire from falling into either Labour or the Lib Dems. So we're in a situation where we've got to see the Prime Minister has his back up against the wall. He needs a big PR coup. He needs to show the people and the nation that he's in charge, and he needs to put Partygate to bed. And what better way to do this than to come down hard on the French over this plan to blockade? Now, he missed an opportunity with the French because of the terrible situation that is facing many migrants. What he should have had is British boots on French soil to take on the human traffickers. He's missed that because he's become overshadowed with Tory sleaze tsunami, so he needs to act fast. Time is not on his side. He can't afford to wait, Simon, until the end of the New Year recess or the Christmas recess and then do something in the new year. He has to act now, and he has to show in Parliament that he is a Prime Minister in control of his country.
So a war with France is the answer?
A trade war with France. I'm not suggesting...
Well, if you're sending the Navy in, it's more than a trade war, isn't it?
Well, it's a trade war. It has already started the trade war with the European Union against us in the United Kingdom. What else can you call the Northern Ireland Protocol but a trade war? Look at the economic situation it is having here in Northern Ireland. There's a crisis here. It's even threatening the peace process. Now, if that's not an inconspicuous trade war by the EU against the United Kingdom, I don't know what is. This is a time for action by the Prime Minister, not a time for fancy, empty rhetoric. He's got to deliver on this.
Well, it's always good to talk to you, and it always gets a response. So we'll talk to you again soon. John, thank you very much. And if you've got any views on what you've just heard, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Already, I'm sure many of you are actually agreeing with him that we need to send in the Navy.
It's coming up to 10 to 7. Coming up here on the programme, the Formula One Grand Finale was wrapped up in Abu Dhabi, but marred in controversy. We'll take a look at exactly what happened after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
So what's it going to look like? Well, mild but cloudy in the south. It's going to be north in the... It's going to be brighter. It's not going to be north. In the north, it will be brighter. Let's take a look at the details. Southwest of England will be rather cloudy as we head towards lunchtime with some patchy drizzle over the hills. It's going to be very mild, though, with temperatures in the low teens. Let's have a look in southeast England and... well, we're just in London right now, so it's going to be about 12 degrees, much warmer than it has been recently. We're likely to see a few breaks in the cloud, allowing to see some sunny intervals develop. South Wales, it's going to be rather wet, turning heavy and persistent at times, the rain there. What about the Midlands? Well, the wet weather will also affect northern parts. Further south, it's going to be drier with some breaks developing in the afternoon of rain. It's feeling mild, though, there as well, with temperatures about 13 degrees. Northeast of England, it's going to start largely dry and bright, but the band of rain will gradually spread northwards, although the far more north may stay dry until dark. South Scotland, it's going to see a day of sunny spells and blustery showers after a very windy start, though, in the north. Winds will gradually ease as the day goes on. Let's move over to Northern Ireland. It's going to see some brilliant sunshine today with just the odd shower possible. Temperatures will reach about 7 or 8 degrees. So largely across the day, it's going to be dry across the south as we head towards dusk with a band of rain slowly moving north. That's the weather for today.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Very good morning. It's 7 minutes to 7. Many of you agreeing with the guest who we've just had on. When I said really to him suggesting that we went to war with France, you're basically saying, yeah, we should. We should go to war with France.
If you don't think that, I'd like to hear from you as well, please. GBNews at gbnews.uk. Here, Simon went, really? And John just said, well, yes, and doubled
down.
down.
He listed all the times we'd saved France in history and why the Navy should go in. So, someone's just said, let me read this to you, because it's quite good. So, nice to see you. Nice to see you this morning, Simon. But yes, really, to Boris standing up to Macron and the French. Then turn towards the EU and get them... Oh, no, let's not take it any further. Anyway, starting off with France is clearly the way you want to go. Send in the Navy.
And send in your messages as well. You can tweet us as well.
Your guest speaker is absolutely right. This country sacrificed our people to liberate the frogs. They have short memories. We need Boris to get tough and send in the Navy. Plan other ferry routes now, says Derek.
Oh,
yes.
GBViews at gbnews.uk.
And
now
if you're watching in France, a very good morning.
Good morning to you.
While we can.
Let's look at the sport. Max Verstappen was eventually able to celebrate his maiden Formula One World Championship after 2 appeals from Mercedes were rejected by the race stewards following the Dutchman's controversial last lap victory in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
The Red Bull driver stormed past title rival Lewis Hamilton in the closing stages of the season-ending race at the Yas Marina circuit, thanks to a late safety car that put him right behind Hamilton on much fresher, grippier, it says here, grippier tyres. Mercedes immediately launched 2 appeals against the result, but saw both of them dismissed.
Well, we're joined now by Formula One journalist Susanna Tennant. Very good morning to you. So we sort of felt like the race was settled until the last lap.
No, we didn't. We thought this was going to happen. We knew there was going to be controversy, and there was.
It's been controversial the whole way through this pairing. What did you make of it?
Well, I was lucky enough to be commentating on it, and I have to say we were looking at each other in the commentary box wide-eyed and almost speechless, because what we were seeing was so unprecedented. As you mentioned, Lewis Hamilton had ended up leading 51 of the 58 laps yesterday, and it looked like he was set to take the race victory, and therefore he would have taken the title. But then, as you mentioned, that late safety car, which then put Max Verstappen right behind Lewis Hamilton, and Max chose to go into the pits and take on, as you were saying, Simon, the grippier tyres, the red ring tyres, the softer tyres. So he had better grip off the start, and he passed Lewis Hamilton on the last lap. The only time in the last 10 years that a last lap pass has been made for a race victory was back in 2016. It was the Austrian Grand Prix, so mid-season, but it was Lewis Hamilton taking the lead from Nico Rosberg. This time, he was having the lead taken away from him.
But you could see what was happening, and they wanted this to end as a race. The only way they could do that was to make that controversial decision, just to get a few of those who were being lapped out of the way. And basically, Red Bull had nothing to lose. They changed the tyres. That strategy paid off.
It certainly did. Of course, people saying, well, Lewis Hamilton was perfectly entitled to go into the pits and to change tyres as well. But I think Mercedes were afraid of giving up track position. And whether that's because they were a little scared about having to make a pass on Max Verstappen at the late part of the race, given what we've seen between those two drivers, maybe they just felt it was safer to keep hold of track position, let Max do what he had to do. But unfortunately, of course, it went Max and Red Bull's way. But I have to say, pretty controversial from the race director, the way they went about it. First of all, saying that the lapped cars didn't need to overtake the safety car. And then 4 minutes later, changing their mind and saying, yes, those cars were going to pass the safety car. And then, of course, all of the protests that followed the race. The safety car proving problematic for Max Verstappen. He got a little bit in front of Lewis Hamilton, but the protest was dismissed. Mercedes saying that he had overtaken Lewis under the safety car. The steward saying, no, that's absolutely fine. He was ahead for a little bit, but we're not going to count it. Again, back conviction. And then a second protest as well about the protocols behind the safety car and how the FIA dealt with it. Again, that protest was dismissed, but again, it was the FIA investigating the FIA. So interesting scenes to end a ridiculous season, really.
Interesting is one way to put it. You know, all of this controversy, is there any potential that that drama actually just spoils the real essence of the sport, these different types of tactics?
I think the race director has had an interesting role to play this year. I think he's been involved quite a lot. I think he's sort of the mediator between the teams and drivers and the stewards. And what he's tried to do this year is, in effect, let them play on. That's his sort of mantra, Michael Massey. I get what he's trying to do. Of course, we want to see as much racing as possible rather than referring it to the stewards, and sometimes their decisions take a little longer. I think, unfortunately, yes, it starts to become a little bureaucratic rather than just focusing on what's going on track. But I still think it made for a very thrilling end to the race and to the season. But I think equally it would have been just as sort of bizarre and 2021-esque for us to have finished behind the safety car and Lewis Hamilton to have taken the championship. So either way, it would have been a very bizarre twist to the script of the year.
And very quickly, I mean, Mercedes say they are appealing. How long could this go on?
Well, funnily enough, Mercedes took Paul Harris QC with them to Abu Dhabi because they were anticipating things to get a little controversial out in Abu Dhabi. And when they came out of the stewards, Red Bull and Christian Horner said, we haven't brought a QC with us to Abu Dhabi. We didn't think it was going to get like this. But Mercedes obviously did. Paul Harris has incredible respect within the legal world, but also within the sports world. He's represented Manchester City Football Club. He's represented Mercedes as well before. He knows what he's doing. He's represented Mercedes twice and been successful in the International Court of Appeal. I do think Mercedes are going to push this one. We'll have to just wait and see. It's one of those things that really yesterday was the epicenter, and now I'm sure people won't really, well, casual fans won't keep up with the story. People will know now that Max Verstappen's world champion. If that does change, I'm not sure how much of everyone's going to be following it over the winter months and the winter break for Formula One.
Rosanna, it's great to talk to you. I mean, the one winner yesterday was Formula One because it just showed how exciting it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe Netflix as well. I think the episode around, I think there'll be several episodes around the battle between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. But yes, what a way to sign out for 2021. And hopefully we'll see the same in 2022.
Well, they both headed back home to Monaco, haven't they? Thank you very much, Rosanna. Lovely to see you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
A very good morning to you. 7 o'clock this Monday morning. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on the Great British Breakfast with Simon McCoy and Rosie Wright.
1 million jabs a day with the army called in to help. That's the promise from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson as he warns of a tidal wave of the Omicron variant. He says we face an emergency with the NHS on its knees, but not everyone agrees. How safe do you feel? Email us at gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Now, the Cabinet Secretary is going to investigate whether the Prime Minister broke the law by hosting a quiz night during lockdown. Are you over the Downing Street Christmas party scandal?
The red list could apparently be scrapped as early as this week. We'll explain why the Transport Secretary is to thank for that expected change.
Fish and ships. Relations between the UK and France hit a new low as French fishermen apparently plan several blockades in Calais and other key ports over a lack of licences. Will that ruin Christmas for many Brits? And do we care? GBviews at gbnews.uk.
And heartbreak for Hamilton. Max Verstappen is crowned Formula One world champion ahead of Lewis Hamilton after 2 appeals from Mercedes are rejected following the Dutchman's thrilling last lap victory at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Well, a very good morning to you and welcome back to the programme. Let's start by looking through the day's front pages, and we can kick off with the Metro. They're reporting, and lots of papers have got the same story this morning, that over 500,000 boosters were given in one day amid concerns over the Omicron variant.
The Guardian leads with Boris Johnson's gamble on 1 million booster jabs a day to tackle the Omicron variant.
The Daily Telegraph leads with the Prime Minister's plans to offer 1 million booster jabs a day to try to ward off another lockdown.
The Daily Mail's top story is Boris Johnson's ambition to give 18 million people booster jabs by the 1st of January.
Plans to offer every adult a booster jab by the end of the month are the Sun's top story.
Boris Johnson's warning of a tidal wave of the Omicron variant is on the front page of The Times, along with his promise to offer all adults a booster jab by the end of the month.
The Daily Express puts the national mission to deliver boosters on its front page.
The Daily Mirror even echoes Boris Johnson, who's urged all adults to get a COVID booster jab amid fears that the Omicron variant will lead to many deaths.
Vicious jackals are posing one of the biggest threats to British livestock ever known, according to the Daily Star.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson, our main story, of course, and his declaration that an Omicron emergency is just hours away after the UK's COVID alert level was raised to 4. In an address last night, he said it was clear that 2 doses of the vaccine are simply not enough to combat the Omicron variant and urged all adults to get a 3rd dose.
We're a great country. We have the vaccines to protect our people. So let's do it. Let's get boosted now. Get boosted now for yourself, for your friends and your family. Get boosted now to protect jobs and livelihoods across this country. Get boosted now to protect our NHS, our freedoms and our way of life.
Booster jabs are going to be offered to everyone over 18 in England from this week. So the target is to have everyone who wants that extra vaccination jabbed by the new year. Well, Professor Lawrence Young is a virologist and Professor of Molecular Oncology at the University of Warwick. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, one of the big problems, let's just put the sort of logistics to one side of practically how to get all those people jabbed. Is that 3rd extra dose going to be something that protects us from this really, it looks like, anticipated spread of Omicron?
Well, I think the most important thing is obviously protecting people from getting severe disease, and all the early data that's come out, both from lab studies and some very, very preliminary data from the UK Health Security Agency, all indicates that that booster jab will give you levels of protection, immune protection, that should be able to protect you from getting very severe disease and from getting symptomatic disease. But it's still early days, you know, and we're fighting against this race, if you like, is against getting the vaccines, understanding the severity of Omicron, whilst doing everything we can to protect ourselves and the NHS.
The evidence thus far, and it's coming from South Africa, which is where we're already seeing that several weeks ahead of us, is that it's not as dangerous as people fear, but it's about pressure on the NHS, this, isn't it?
Well, you know, it's also about sadly, having to see how long it takes to get severe disease. We know that just by numbers, even if Omicron is more mild, actually, than Delta, it will still give a wave of infection that will seek out people who are more vulnerable, that will affect people who don't have full vaccination, and therefore there will be pressure on the NHS. At the moment, comparisons with South Africa are difficult. It's a younger population on the whole there. It's a population that's been exposed to previous waves of infection, therefore there's levels of natural immunity, albeit relatively lower levels of vaccination. So I think those comparisons are difficult. And what this is about, really, I think, is hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. And it's much better to be on the front foot.
It's really becoming clear, isn't it, that initially when we first got the vaccine, we thought like that could be a solution. Instead, the vaccination process, more like flu, it is going to be a process. How often do you anticipate that we're going to have to be going to get, our 3rd booster, 4th booster, etc.?
So, yeah, I mean, it's a couple of things to say about that. I mean, firstly, again, we don't know. A lot of it will depend on how long the protective immunity from booster jabs actually lasts. The best case scenario, I think, is that we all have to have annual jabs to protect us, and those annual jabs will be modified to cope with the most relevant variant at that time. The trouble is, booster jabs are not a magic bullet. They will give protection, but again, remember that it will take a couple of weeks to get that high level of protection after you've been boosted. So it's not an immediate effect, or even if we're able to get as many people jabbed as the current ambitions, I think we need to be hearing more about other changes as well. So, from today it's working from home, that will have a significant effect, but I suspect we're going to have to bring in some additional protective measures actually alongside Plan B.
The downside, and it's a massive downside to this, is obviously the NHS is having to concentrate on this at the expense of other illnesses that need treating, and it was quite clear in what the Prime Minister said last night that's going to happen. How worried are you about that?
Very. I mean, people get confused about what I do. I work on infectious diseases and cancer. So I'm very, 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 very concerned about cancer waiting lists, the impact that we've seen over the last 20 months on cancer screening, for instance, and we're storing up enormous problems for ourselves. And it's a real dilemma. It really is. And so I think we just have to be really concerned that what's going to happen over the next few weeks in this massive drive is going to mean we take our eye off the ball, and that backlog that was just starting to get to grips with that backlog or in GP practices and in hospitals is going to be further delayed, and that will have significant implications.
Well, when someone like you says you're very, very, very worried, that means people will die.
It means that people will go undiagnosed, and certainly, say, in my area, in cancer, we're very, very concerned that people are going to be left on waiting lists. There'll be delays in cancer surgery. We know that what this does is make people more hesitant about going out anyway and going to hospital for appointments. And we know that obviously this drive to get 1 million people vaccinated every day is going to have enormous effects on all sorts of aspects of healthcare in our country. And it's whichever way you look at it, there's a big price to pay, and it's a real difficult situation. And in a way, it's a lose-lose situation, because I just don't think we're going to be able to boost as many people in this time frame. And I also think we'll end up with this enormous legacy of people who will need treatment, and delaying treatment for these types of diseases like cancer, heart disease, takes a toll.
Just really quickly, sort of Boris Johnson is pleading with the people, anyone over 18, please go and get your booster jab. Do you have a plea either to people or to politicians?
I mean, my plea is that vaccines do a lot of the heavy lifting. We've heard that. I think getting everybody boosted in time to protect from Omicron is going to be very, very challenging, and that means we have to think very seriously about the way we behave over the next few weeks, and that's wearing face masks in all enclosed areas. Try not to mix in large groups, particularly in poorly ventilated spaces. What you don't want to do is end up in a position where you're getting infected over the next 10 days or so, and end up have to isolate over Christmas and miss Christmas with friends and family. There's no reason why we shouldn't be enjoying Christmas with friends and family. It won't be a normal Christmas, but what you don't want to do is get infected over the period. And please use lateral flow tests. One of the things that we have now in our armoury are lateral flow tests. I think take a lateral flow test, check before you go out, and if you're positive, do not isolate. And I think these are things we can do now to protect ourselves, our families, our friends, and the NHS.
Professor Lawrence Young, thank you very much for your time this morning. Good to talk to you as ever.
Thank you.
Are you sort of taking any precautions to try and protect Christmas a little bit?
Well, I'm working, which helps.
But I think people are thinking about going invited to a dinner party. Please take a lateral flow test before you come.
I think everybody is testing.
Big group?
I mean, my experience, limited though it is that people are testing a lot. And if you do that in the morning and in the evening, well, what more can you do?
Very little.
If you're double jabbed, if you've had your booster, and you wear your mask when you're supposed to, and you test, I mean, what more can you do?
I have to say, I got my booster jab yesterday, and we're talking about efficiency. It was very efficient. There was a very long queue of people waiting for walk-ins. I had an appointment, but even in the queue, I was being told to take my coat off in the queue so that you weren't even waiting the time to take your jacket off. I probably sat down less than a minute after I was out and waiting my 15 minutes.
Nobody in the building knows you had your booster yesterday. You haven't been going around going, oh, my arm really hurts all morning much.
My arm doesn't hurt too much, but I do feel a bit weary. So
that's different. that's my effect on the whole thing. Right, you're watching The Great British Breakfast. Very good morning to you. It's 11 minutes past 7. Simon and Rosie with you this morning.
Let's give you an overview of what else is happening. Now, we've been discussing this already. French fishermen are set to carry out a blockade of crucial ports in a bid to try to spoil Christmas for millions of Brits. Well, the planned blockade will disrupt our fairly weak supply chain in the busy festive season. It's the latest move in a long-running dispute between the UK and France over fishing licences. The French feel entitled to the same pre-Brexit fishing rights that UK waters that they're now being denied. Previous moves from the French include a threat to cut off power to the UK Channel Islands.
The travel red list will reportedly be scrapped as soon as this week. According to the Mail on Sunday, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps convinced his colleagues it should be replaced with testing for the fully vaccinated. The return of the red list 2 weeks ago was met with widespread criticism, with travellers needing to quarantine at a hotel at a cost of £2,285 per person for 10 days.
The Welsh Health Minister says new restrictions will likely be imposed in the next few weeks to help deal with the Omicron variant. Alan Morgan says the government wants to act proportionately, but a spike in cases is expected quickly. Well, it comes as First Minister Mark Drakeford warned Omicron could lead to large numbers of people in hospital.
Northern Ireland's COVID certification scheme is set to become legally enforceable from today. The scheme requires people to prove COVID status to gain entry to a range of hospitality venues and large events. It was introduced last month with a 2-week grace period. Patrons wishing to access nightclubs, pubs, restaurants and other licensed premises will need to provide proof of vaccination or a negative lateral flow test result.
Officers investigating the disappearance of a nursing assistant have found a body in a South London park. 32-year-old Petra Sankova went missing on November the 28th on her way home from a children's hospital where she worked. Formal identification has not yet taken place, but her family has been informed. A man arrested in connection with her disappearance has been released on bail, pending further inquiries.
The Kentucky governor says morgues in the United States town of Mayfield are struggling to keep up with the number of victims. This after a series of powerful tornadoes ripped through the state. More than 100 people are feared dead across 6 states. At least 80 were killed in Kentucky in what's been described as one of the largest tornado outbreaks in US history.
Some MPs are calling on the government to rethink its plans to require voters to show photo ID at polling stations. Well, the Commons Constitutional Affairs Committee says the move is likely to reduce turnout and make it more difficult to vote, and should not move ahead without further research into how it will affect different groups. But the government says the move is necessary to protect elections from potential voter fraud.
Sports news, Formula One officials have rejected 2 protests now from Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes team after Max Verstappen won a dramatic Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The result secured the Dutchman's first World Championship. Hamilton had led from the start, but Red Bull's Verstappen was able to overtake him in the final lap. Mercedes intends to appeal the verdict.
In entertainment news, Emmerdale actor Danny Miller has been crowned the winner of ITV's I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He beat fellow finalists actor Simon Gregson and singer Frankie Bridge to be crowned King of the Castle. Miller described winning as the best thing that's ever happened to me, other than the birth of his son Albert 3 weeks before the show began.
The weather today it's going to be cloudy in the south with persistent outbreaks of rain in Wales and the Midlands. The north will still stay drier with sunny spells and a few showers in the west. It's going to feel mild.
Now, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, could face the biggest rebellion from his own MPs yet during tomorrow's vote to try to pass new COVID measures into law this week. The BBC estimates that around 60 Tory MPs will oppose the measures, which will necessitate proof of vaccination to enter large venues.
Well, government sources told the BBC the introduction of Plan B measures for England will be divided into 3 separate votes on Tuesday. Plan B is expected to become law as Labour is backing the government.
Well, to give us his analysis is John Stevens, Deputy Political Editor of the Daily Mail. John, we'll be joined by John very shortly. But let us know what you think. Does this actually have an impact on Boris Johnson? If it is up to 60 MPs, we've got John back, decide to vote against the Prime Minister. Well, let's ask John instead. How worried do you think Boris Johnson actually is?
Well, it's not looking great for him this week. This vote tomorrow, it looks like you're going to get the biggest rebellion we've had so far of his premiership. A lot of Tory MPs are unhappy. Part of that is they don't like this idea of so-called vaccine passports. And they also are worried that this is a stepping stone to more restrictions. So I think you want a lot of them out there tomorrow, putting down a marker to Boris Johnson, saying that we are really concerned about this. But obviously, because Labour are going to vote for these measures, they are going to pass through Parliament quite easily, I'd expect.
So just how damaged is Boris Johnson in the end? If he wins it, he wins it.
If he wins it, he wins it. But I think you start to see his authority ebbing away if he's having to rely on the Labour Party. If we wind back to Brexit, remember when Theresa May started about talking with the Labour Party about getting her Brexit deal through? And that really was the beginning of the end for her. I think if you've just got this as a one-off this week, it won't be that problematic for Boris Johnson. If we start to go into the new year and we start to see the government talking about bringing in more lockdown restrictions again, and you don't have Tory MPs voting for them, then I think that's when it starts to get really difficult for the Prime Minister. I think that's when you would get cabinet ministers starting to mouth off people who might see themselves as potential leadership candidates in the future. And you've also always got that risk in the background of do Tory MPs start sending in letters to Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee. And at the end of the day, Tory MPs have the power to get rid of a Prime Minister by getting rid of them as Tory leader.
How do you think he's actually faring in the party? Because Boris Johnson is so, known for his bluster and being sort of generous with the truth. Why do you think there's been this sort of significant shift where the tide might just turn against him?
I think part of it is that there seems to have been mistake after mistake after mistake. We've seen a series of own goals. We all remember the Owen Paterson row when Tory MPs were ordered to try and get him off being suspended, and that blew up in their faces. It went wrong. I think on this Christmas party row, which has dominated the news over the last week or so, there are a lot of Tory MPs who think that Downing Street could have handled that much better. And so I think there's concerns that there's all these unforced errors being made, and they really are keen for the government to get on the front foot. And I think we'll quite likely see some sort of reset in the new year. Boris Johnson come out and say that, he's getting on with his levelling up agenda, etc., etc. I think MPs are quite keen that that's not just words, it's not just a reset which lasts a few days and then kind of falls limp. It needs to be a proper message to the country about why it's important that the Tory party in power so they can change the country. And we've not really heard much of that in the last few months, partly because coronavirus has still been dominating the headlines.
John, a lot of people think this frivolous, but on Twitter last night, massive reaction to just how the Prime Minister looked on that television address last night. No brush had passed that mop for some time by the look of it. And there were suggestions that just shows a rather large disrespect for all of us. I mean, is it something that people are discussing?
Well, I personally find it so frustrating when you see him out and about looking a total mess. I just think it is embarrassing. But we know that's part of his whole shtick, part of his look. I mean, when I turned on the TV last night and saw him, and that hair was proper Scarecrow level 10 or whatever, and he did look tired and he almost looked a bit ill. And then you think, this is a 57-year-old man who's got a newborn baby at home. He had a baby on Thursday, he's got a toddler, he's got a dog, and you think, well, no wonder he looks so tired and washed out when he's got that going on behind the scenes, plus all the stress of the politics of the last week, all these allegations about parties in Downing Street, concerns about the decoration of his flat, his looming rebellion, and then come Thursday, the possibility of him losing an uber-safe Tory seat in North Shropshire.
Other than that, everything's fine. John, really good to see you. Thanks for talking to us this morning. John Stevens, FNP doing that.
Well, we'll see tomorrow what happens.
Well.
Now, lots to come up here on the programme. As if working from home orders begin today, we're looking at how it's going to impact the manufacturing industry after the weather with Simon.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
And looking ahead to today's weather, the UK is looking mild but cloudy in the south, however in the north brighter with showers. Let's take a look at the details. We go to the southwest of England. It's going to be rather cloudy as we head towards lunchtime with some patchy drizzle over the hills. We're very mild though, with temperatures in the low teens. Moving further east towards southeast England and East Anglia, we're likely to see a few breaks in the clouds, allowing some sunny interludes to develop. Wales, however, it's going to have a rather wet day, with that rain turning heavy and persistent at times, especially across the northwest of the country. Wet weather will also affect northern parts of the Midlands as we head east, but further south it's going to be drier with perhaps a few breaks developing during the afternoon. To feel mild here with temperatures reaching 13 Celsius. Northern England will start the day largely dry and bright, but the band of rain will gradually spread northwards during the day, although the far north may stay dry until after dark. Scotland's going to see a day of sunny spells and blustery showers. However, after a very windy start in the north, winds will gradually ease as the day goes on. To move across to Northern Ireland, it's here where we'll see the best of the sunshine today with just the odd shower possible there. Temperatures reaching 8 Celsius. So it's going to remain largely dry across the south as we head towards dusk, with the band of rain only slowly moving north. That's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It is 26 minutes past 7.
Now, the government's new work from home mandate begins today. At the same time, its new Plan B rules are put in front of MPs. One industry which won't be hugely affected, though, is the manufacturing sector. So how will that crucial sector of the economy cope during this new chapter of the pandemic? Well, here to explain this, Fahid Khan, who's senior economist at the manufacturing organisation Make UK. In real practical terms, and very good morning to you, working from home, how much does that impinge on the industry?
Well, manufacturing was one of the few industries that remained open during the last few series of restrictions, even during the earlier lockdowns. What we've seen since then is many businesses have learned to adapt in that time frame to focus on how to maneuver around the environment to meet their targets in a safe way. So in terms of the direct impact on their operations, I don't expect to see anything severely affected That being said, it's important to recognize that manufacturing as an industry is not possible for them to work from home. It can be done for some manufacturing workers, such as back office staff like HR, like finance. They can work from home, but it's not possible for on-site production staff. What we do want to see, or what we want to be wary of, is that the impact of the restrictions, we don't want to see a return to something like the pandemic, which have created massive issues for manufacturers over a few months ago. If isolations were to dramatically increase despite being able to continue operating, then that would cause many problems for manufacturers who are already struggling to fill jobs at the moment.
Fahim, good morning to you. It's all about optimism, isn't it? And what the last few weeks have done have taken any optimism out of people's forecasts, certainly for the end of this year and possibly for the beginning of next. How damaging can that be?
Well, actually, manufacturing, it's not an ideal situation, but they have shown great resilience during the pandemic. Our own data shows that manufacturing since the start of this year have continued to bounce back. We've seen businesses make significant changes to the way they operate on the shop floor, for example, reorganizing the way they place different machinery and people on the staff floor so that people can stay 2 meters apart from each other. We don't think that it's going to be a significant effect. I think at the moment, the restrictions themselves are not severe enough to really directly impact manufacturers because they've already gone through this learning and education process of how to manage that environment already. That being said, it's not the most ideal situation if it results in workers not being able to actually come in to work, because that is the thing that we need to watch out for.
It's actually really encouraging to hear so much optimism from you. How do you imagine, if sort of things stay roughly as they are now, even with the sort of uncertainty that we've got, how do you imagine sort of the next 12 months panning out?
Our forecasts show that the manufacturing industry is on track to return to its 2019 pre-COVID-19 level in terms of the value of output. We're seeing that if things stay on their current trajectory, manufacturing, the industry should be on that level by the end of next year. So that is quite positive for us. But that is also making an assumption that there aren't going to be any surprises along the way. And I know that that's difficult to actually make a prediction on, given that over the last few weeks as well, we've seen many surprises that manufacturers were not expecting.
OK, well, it's good to talk to you. Thank you very much, Fahim Khan. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Now, at 7:30, we were talking about this earlier, more than 500,000 learner drivers are still waiting to take their test because of a huge backlog. For parts of the pandemic, learners were banned from taking and getting their driving qualifications. Now, the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency is being criticised for not doing more to try to reduce the long queues to test centres.
Quentin Wilson is a motoring journalist and transport campaigner, who's also patron of the Driving Instructors National Council. Quentin, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Many people affected by what's happened over the last couple of years, of course, but for driving lessons, it's had a particularly strong impact, hasn't it?
Yeah, the number of tests taken is down by 73%, and this is just a byproduct of the pandemic, like so many other industries. And you can complain at the DVSA as much as you like, but the logistic feat of repurposing all those missed lessons and missed tests is quite considerable. So that's why we've got 500,000 kids waiting to take their tests. There are systemic problems in the whole way people are taught to drive, and we have a shortage of driving instructors. We have a shortage of driving examiners as well, and we need to encourage more people into this industry. If you ask the question, who would want to be a driving instructor or a driving examiner, it's like the HGV crisis. It's an industry we have not supported or cherished enough. So I'd be saying that we really do need to have a push to get more people in this industry, so we've got more people able to test these kids and examine them properly. And the worst thing we could do would be to make standards easier, because road safety, the foundation of road safety, are those men and women who diligently test and teach these kids and make them into safe drivers. So it's something the government needs to look at. And I worry that the kind of 4 wheels bad, 2 wheels good culture that we've had over the last decade in this country is impinging on people investing and cherishing the whole driving, teaching, learning to drive culture in this country.
Well, the DVSA, they've announced a sort of series of measures to try and recruit more examiners and also encourage those who've recently retired to come back in. But one of their other potential solutions is to tell learners only take your test when they're confident they can pass. Is that really one of the things clogging up the system? People sort of having a bit of a chance and thinking, oh, I might just scrape through?
Well, it is, because you've got a 49% pass rate. That's the average, which is kind of low, although it is up from say, two or 3 years ago, where it was around 41, 42%. So, yes, I mean, an instructor should make sure that their pupil is able to pass the test and should not put them forward. So quite a few of those people hanging around waiting for tests have not passed because they have not reached the standard. And I think it's absolutely right to say, let's raise the standard. It's really, really important.
Of course, a driving test, it's a rite of passage for young people who've gone through hell for the last 2 years anyway. I mean, it's a huge moment of pressure, actually, isn't it?
It's massive, massive pressure. I mean, my daughter is going through it now, and she's been doing theory tests for weeks and weeks and weeks. She's got to pass that first, then she's got to take her practical. She's in this long waiting list. And we should make it easier and make it more of a kind of joy. I'm also a patron of a company called A Young Driver, where we teach children from 11 to 17 on private land to drive cars. And I think once you get the below the dashboard stuff, the gears and the clutch and all that stuff mastered, you're a much, much better driver when you come to take lessons and on public roads and able to negotiate hazards. So I think what we do is we teach kids in this huge rush to get everything learned in a small time window, less than a few months, and then expect them to pass and expect them to launch onto the roads and be safe. So I've always campaigned for a decade to have younger driving permissible, so that they can come to the real roads and come to driving tests and driving lessons with a degree of experience on how to control the car.
Quentin, it's always good to see you. Not always in sync, but it's good to see you nonetheless. Thank you very much.
It's giving me horrible memories. When I did my driving test, the first question I had was, they ask you some questions before you actually pull away.
Yes, what's that man doing with the red flag in front of you? Was that it? No.
But I had to check what some brake light system was, so I turned the key in the ignition only halfway to get the electrics on. So then when he said, oh, Rosamond, please pull away, I tried to pull away. Yeah, Rosamond. I tried to pull away without turning the engine on. It was completely mortifying.
So you hadn't started the car. That's a good start,
I was thinking,
or not?
How have I completely lost the ability to drive Italian? And he said, Rosamond, you might like to turn the engine on. And I was like, I must have failed before I even pulled away.
But you passed.
Of course I passed.
Of course you did.
Well, that was of 2 minors before I'd actually moved the car, which I think is impressive.
You're watching The Great British Breakfast with Rosamond Wright and Simon McCoy. Coming up. Yes, you've done it now. As the price of putting on a Christmas feast rises, would you charge your guests for their dinner? If you did, how much? We'll find out in a moment.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, you're watching The Great British Breakfast. It is coming up to 20 minutes to 8, in fact, here on The Great British Breakfast, as it is where you are.
Now, new Azuma train services launched this morning between Middlesbrough and London. London North Eastern Railway, or LNER, says this is the first wave of new services between Teesside and London. The very first train is just about to leave the station. It might have actually just gone. Our North East of England reporter.
Another half hour, yeah. It's another half hour, I think.
Oh,
well, Rachel Sweeney is there for us at Middlesbrough train station. My reckoning, it's exactly half an hour's time. Is that right?
Well, the train has just left, but this is the first direct train from Middlesbrough to London in an amazing 30 years. We are absolutely thrilled. This is hugely important to my patch. This can only be good news for us economically. This can only bring in more opportunities. This area has seen record business deals and record investments recently, so it's no surprise that we are seeing more investment in transport. It's something that we've been calling for a long time. The Teesside Freeport is bringing in business from all over the world, and this is only going to make us more internationally attractive. Now, although it's a really exciting time for this area, we do have to question, why it's taken this long, and that's something we'll look to in a minute. But let me show you the fanfare that we have just seen here at Middlesbrough train station for the first ever train service from Middlesbrough to London in 30 years. Look at this. Look at the fireworks. The atmosphere was fantastic. It really was spectacular to be here for that. So this is going to be a Monday to Friday service. People here are absolutely thrilled with that. It will stop at York on the way northbound, but on the way down it will also connect Thornaby. Now, although this is an exciting time, it is time to ask why it's taken so long. Is this part of the levelling up agenda? Is the pressure from that? Is it because there is a new Treasury hub in Darlington, so it's in the government's interest to have more links to the capital? Of course, LNER is government owned. Well, this is something that I put to the managing director, David Horn. Here's what he had to say.
Well, the case for the service is improving all the time with the investment and the real shift towards relocation towards the north, of course. Physically, there have been works taking place at the station to accommodate the new service. And of course, it's taken a while for us to get our Azuma trains into full service. The Mayor has made investment of over £22 million into the station to enable this service to start.
It's in the government's interest now, isn't it, to really pay attention to this part of the world. It's really up and coming, there's so much investment, and now, of course, the Treasury.
Yes, indeed. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the Tees Valley and on the broader northeast, of course. The case is really strong. There's parts of the country that are overheating in terms of the economy, so this is about rebalancing activity, but it's also, of course, about fundamentally providing a better service by train that's environmentally friendly, that enables people to connect between the towns and the cities across the country.
Yes, now Azuma actually means east in Japanese, and that train was modelled on a Japanese bullet train, and it really did come flying through the station like a bullet. It was fantastic to see. It was assembled at County Durham's Hitachi plant. It will run Monday to Friday, and it really is another cemented way to show that this area really is firmly on the global map right now.
Indeed, Rachel. Thank you very much. Rachel Sweeney there with the latest from Middlesbrough, and the train's gone.
Now, the trade union says on-the-spot inspections of lorries and HGV drivers are vanishingly rare on the UK's roads. In fact, they only happen on average every 88,000 miles a lorry's been driven. That's a drop by 39% in on-the-spot inspections in recent years, says Unite. And they've called on the government to explain how it ensures that all lorries and HGV drivers are doing so safely and abiding by the law.
Well, the Unite National Officer, Adrian Jones, joins us now. Adrian, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Simon.
On the face of it, this looks concerning. How worried are you?
We are worried, and so should every road user in the UK, because, as Rosie's just said, the number of roadside checks to ensure that vehicles are roadworthy and that they are that drivers are abiding by the rules are extremely rare. 39% reduction in the last couple of years is just shocking, to be perfectly honest. And our members, our professional drivers out on the road network, deserve to know that they are working in a safe environment.
So tell us what you think the implications are on, road safety.
Well, it's blindingly obvious. These roadside checks make sure that maintenance of vehicles is kept up and that drivers are working legally. You only have to look at the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency's social media and police force social media to see regularly, almost daily, vehicles being pulled up that are very, very dangerous with significant and catastrophic failures of brakes, suspension, etc. And that's a really serious issue, as you can imagine. Now, whilst many hauliers, many commercial companies have very high standards and the union works with companies to make sure that vehicles are kept safe on the roads. This is another way of those people who are prepared to test their luck to undercut and undermine those legitimate businesses in the country. And without a check every 3 times around the world a lorry could drive before it gets stopped, I think more and more people, more and more companies, disreputable companies, will take the risk and cut back on their maintenance and their checks and push the boundaries, which will make our country's roads less safe.
Adrian, we've been reporting for months about the shortage of HGV drivers and that they are in a much stronger position than they were a few years ago, and they can sort of pick and choose who they work for. So doesn't that knock on into safety issues? Aren't hauliers going to have to take a much more responsible approach if they're going to attract the drivers they need?
Well, you'd think that, wouldn't you? But one thing our members have been saying in Unite is that the system whereby the enforcement agency rates operators, so this is something that, in effect, a traffic light system. So an operator will be, if it's on green, they've got a good record, they're good standard. If they're on red, then those vehicles are more likely to be stopped. This is a process that's been in place for a long, long time. Unfortunately, drivers are not allowed to know what rating their company is or what their potential company is. So whilst drivers should and rightfully be able to pick their best employer, how can they do that when this is all kept secret? So we don't know which companies are currently running the higher risk of being on a red rating, which means that they have significant problems in their maintenance and their record keeping. So Unite has been calling for a long time for more transparency in this process so that our members, our existing members and drivers coming into the industry, as well as members of the public, know when they see a lorry on the road that it is safe.
Adrian, it's really good to give us your time. Thanks for talking to us about this. Adrian Jones.
Thank you.
Now, it's 7:45. Coming up is, of course, Christmas, and the cost of making Christmas dinner is higher than ever, according to new research. Samsung UK found the average Christmas spread costs the host around £30 per guest, meaning they can find themselves paying upwards of about, £150 for dinner just for 5 people. In a year of high inflation, rising gas prices and now pricier turkeys, has time come to ask our guests to chip in for dinner?
Well, apparently 1/4 of Brits are planning to do so this Christmas. That's according to the same research. Well, Teg Desange is a director of connected services and technology at Samsung. They conducted this research. First of all, before we get into whether people are actually going to do this, what is behind this huge drive in prices up?
Yeah, good morning. So what we saw in our research was that millions, unfortunately, of Brits are looking to cut back on their spend for this festive break. And as well as traditional costs in terms of hosting and gifting, more than half cited rising gas and electricity costs as a reason to spend less over this coming break. Now, I think that's amplified and understandable given the fact that the energy costs, if you like, our household spend on energy is the one household spend that you're less able to control or budget for, because you don't really know how much you're spending until weeks, if not months later, once you receive the bill. And more than 60% in the research had noticed a spike in their costs when it came to energy within the last 12 months. So that creates a level of anxiety, I think, overall, not really knowing whether you can afford to keep the heating on or your energy costs throughout that festive period. And in fact, again, nearly a third of the research, or those in the research, showed that they didn't really know or understand what steps they could take to reduce or control their energy usage. However, this is where our brand new service, SmartThings Energy, a completely free service, is looking to bring energy cost to make it much more visible, accessible, and far easier for all consumers to understand throughout the festive break going forwards, so that they can have far greater control and one less thing to worry about this Christmas.
So is it about arming people with information, really, so you understand how long you put your heating on for, that equates to, however many pounds and pence?
Yes, exactly that. So effectively, anyone with a smart meter can attach that smart meter to any Android or iOS smartphone or tablet. And once you've attached your smart meter, you get to see in actual pounds and pence exactly how much you're spending. And you get to see that, for the previous day, the previous week, previous month, and up to a year, even if you change your energy provider. And what you can also do with SmartThings Energy is you can set budgets. So you can set a budget and receive automated notifications on your smartphone or your tablet, so that you have a far greater level of control and you know exactly where you are on your spend throughout the festive break.
All right, okay, that's that. But the suggestion that we should start charging our guests, I mean, what are you saying? That, well, perhaps if you don't pay enough, we won't quite cook the turkey enough? I mean, how nasty are you going to get with this?
Well, that's what came through in our research, is the fact that almost 25% of people are tempted to ask guests to contribute. But I think we've been working very closely with a financial advisor, and a couple of tips from her would very much be around seasonal budgeting. So making sure that we're clear, we're very good. People are very good at budgeting on a monthly basis, but they sometimes then forget to budget for festive breaks. They forget to budget for birthdays and holidays. So that's critical. And then if you're able to, particularly going into next year, have a buffer in regards to a couple of months of spend, so that you can absorb some of these increased costs as and when they arise.
Tech Desange, it's good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Coming up here on the programme, England hopes to bounce back to winning ways against Australia after, I think it's fair to say, a disappointing start to the Ashes test. What exactly went wrong for England, though? We'll find out after the weather.
They lost.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, in the UK is looking cloudy. Let's start off in the south. It's going to be mild but cloudy, brighter in the north with showers. Southwest England will be rather cloudy as we head towards lunchtime with some patchy drizzle over the hills. It's going to be very mild though. Let's move towards southeast England and East Anglia. No, not quite yet. In London, temperatures of 12 degrees with some sunny spells that will develop there. What about in Wales? In Cardiff, we're going to have a rather wet day with the rain turning heavy and persistent at times, especially across the northwest of the country. In the Midlands now, the wet weather will also affect northern parts, but further south it's going to be dry with a few breaks developing in the afternoon. It's feeling mild here with temperatures about 11 to 13 degrees. In northeastern England, we're going to start the day largely dry and bright, but the band of rain will gradually spread northwards during the day, although the far north may stay dry until after dark. Heading over to Scotland now, we're going to see a day of sunny spells, but with blustery showers as well. After a very windy start in the north, winds will gradually ease as the day goes on. What about in Northern Ireland? Here we'll see the best of the sunshine today, just the odd shower possible. Temperatures here will reach 8 degrees Celsius. It's going to remain largely dry across the day and hopefully in the studio too, across the south as we head towards dusk with a band of rain only slowly moving north. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It is 6 minutes to 8.
I've got a plug in my hand. I can't really explain it to you right now.
Welcome back.
Rose's computer will be back in action shortly.
Well, welcome back to the Great British Breakfast with Simon and Rosie. Let's do some sport.
It's the only plug I've had all morning. Right, now, Max Verstappen was eventually able to celebrate his maiden Formula One World Championship after two appeals from Mercedes were rejected by the race stewards. That followed the Dutchman's controversial last lap victory at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The Red Bull driver stormed past title rival Lewis Hamilton in the closing stages of the season-ending race at the Yas Marina circuit, thanks to a late safety car that put him right behind Hamilton on much fresher, grippier tyres. Mercedes immediately launched two appeals against the result, but saw both dismissed.
Now, England bowler Stuart Broad said he was ready to go in the first Ashes test in Brisbane and was disappointed to be left out. It follows England slumping to a 9-wicket defeat in the opener of the 5-match series, managing just 147 runs in their first innings. Australia eased to the 20 runs required in the last innings, losing just 1 wicket to top off a convincing display. In positive news for the tourists, though, Australian fast bowler Josh Hazlewood has been ruled out of the next Test match, which begins on Thursday in Adelaide, as a result of a rib injury.
Well, cricket journalist Mark Church joins us now. Mark, good morning.
Good morning to you, Simon.
I know we're in trouble when we start hoping that other players are getting injured.
Yeah, I heard you say that just before you went to the break, what went wrong, and I heard you mutter lots. I think that was an understatement, to be honest with you. England went into this Test match completely unprepared. It had rained the entire time in Brisbane. I think they only got 2 days practice against each other. They arrived, green pitch, cloudy, and you think, oh, Christmas has come early if you're Joe Root and you're England. I think they thought a bit too much about it. They got a bit complicated by winning the toss, deciding to bat first against an Australian attack that's one of the best in the world, but batsmen completely undercooked. And then the team they picked just made no sense whatsoever. And I heard Rosie saying there about Stuart Broad was ready to go at the Gabba. I'm sure he was. I think he's being polite here. And to go in without Stuart Broad, I thought with the Jimmy Anderson thing, they might be doing a clever tactic and Jimmy might play. And then I just felt so sorry for Jack Leach. He's hardly played any cricket whatsoever. He's thrown in there basically to try and tie up an end, gets targeted by Australia. They knock him out the attack, and England have got nowhere to go. So what will be really interesting is what happens in the next few days, is how England sort of pull themselves together and get back in to the series. Yeah, Josh Hazlewood's out. There are two bowlers called Jai Richardson and Michael Neser just waiting in the wings. There was talk that Richardson would play in the first test and replace Mitchell Starc anyway. So I'm not quite sure how much difference that's going to make to that Australian attack. But I think England just have to go in there and play what's in front of them. Don't get overcomplicated. Adelaide will be a day-night test with a pink ball. Anderson and Broad should get it to swing round corners. But don't overthink it. Just play what's in front of you, because I think that they went to Brisbane, overthought it, were undercooked, and we all saw what happened.
It sounds as though you think the England team need a bit of sympathy.
Yeah, I feel sorry for the players, Rosie, to be honest with you. You know, you're going into a test series in Australia for the Ashes, and yet with all the coronavirus and quarantine and the restrictions in Australia, I get that, but you arrive in Brisbane and you have a couple of days play against each other. It rains the entire time. You get no quality practice, and then you bung straight in to the first test in Brisbane against an Australia side that everyone kept saying, oh, they'll be undercut, they'll be undercut. No. They were never going to be undercut. You know, that is a quality Australian side. So I really do feel for the players. And as well, as I say, that with what happened at the toss of the coin and the team they picked, it's muddled thinking at the moment. And I think they've just got to be simple. I think, as I say, arrive in Adelaide, it'll be under lights with the pink ball, pick Broad and Anderson. You know, it's an absolute no-brainer. Pick Broad and Anderson and hope that those two do what they do. And I think from a batting point of view, I think they just look out of form. I think they look out of nick, and trying to find form in the middle of an Ashes series, it's not the easiest thing to do. But, you know, it's only one test. If they get back into this, it'll be one of the great comebacks, to be honest with you, because, as I say, going into an Ashes series undercooked, nobody would ask for that to happen.
Now, two sportsmen who were totally cooked yesterday, Max Verstappen and, of course... my brain's going. Lewis
Hamilton.
That's it. I mean, somebody had to win. It was always going to be a controversial race, and so it proved. I mean, what are your thoughts the day after?
Well, I'm no Formula One expert, but it slightly... It sort of smacked to me a bit like, you know, when you're at school and you're playing in the backyard and your team is 4-0 up in a football game, and then you go next goal wins. And it smacked a little bit of that to me, that, you know, that last light just sort of got banged on. And fair play to Max Verstappen for doing, and what a dramatic finish, you know, overtaking Lewis Hamilton on the final lap to win the World Championship. And, you know, nothing against Max Verstappen at all. Congratulations to him. But it sort of smacked a bit of let's make it up as we go along in a World Championship final. And as I say, the only thing I can equate it to is, you know, you're playing with your mates in the garden, your team's 4-0 up, and then the final whistle's about to go, and someone says, "Oh, next goal wins," and the other team score and win the game. But as I say, dramatic final, and from the sounds of it, it doesn't sound like it's over yet anyway, with Mercedes putting their appeals in. So we'll wait to see what happens, I think.
Mark Church, good to see you. Yeah, there's quite a row, isn't there? We'll see what I did there. We'll be back in a moment. A very good morning. You're watching The Great British Breakfast. It's 8 o'clock. It's Monday, the 13th of December. These are the stories that matter to you and to us on The Great British Breakfast with me, Simon McCoy, and Rosie Wright.
1 million jabs a day with the army called in to help. That is the promise from the Prime Minister Boris Johnson as he warns of a tidal wave of the Omicron variant of coronavirus. He says we face an emergency with the NHS on its knees. Not everyone agrees. How safe do you feel? Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
The Cabinet Secretary will investigate whether the Prime Minister broke the law by hosting a quiz night during lockdown. Are you over the Downing Street Christmas party scandal?
The travel red list could apparently be scrapped as early as this week. We'll explain why the Transport Secretary is to thank for the expected change.
And fish and ships. Relations between the UK and France hit a new low as French fishermen apparently plan several blockades in Calais and other key ports over a lack of licences. It'll ruin Christmas for many Brits, but do the French actually care? GBViews at gbnews.uk if you want to let us know.
And heartbreak for Hamilton. Max Verstappen is crowned Formula One champion ahead of Lewis Hamilton after 2 appeals from Mercedes are rejected following the Dutchman's thrilling last lap victory at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
OK, let's give you a sense of what's in the papers today, looking at the front pages. The Metro reports on a record 530,086 boosters being given in one day amid concerns about the Omicron variant.
The Guardian leads with Boris Johnson's gamble on 1 million booster jabs a day to tackle the new variant of coronavirus.
The Daily Telegraph leads with the Prime Minister's plans to offer 1 million booster jabs a day to ward off another lockdown.
The Daily Mail's top story is Boris Johnson's ambition to give 18 million people booster jabs by the 1st of January.
Plans to offer every adult a booster jab by the end of the month are also the Sun's top story.
Boris Johnson's warning of a tidal wave of the Omicron variant is the front of the Times, along with, as we've heard, his promise to offer all adults a booster jab by the end of the month.
The Daily Express puts the national mission to deliver boosters on its front page too.
The Daily Mirror echoes Boris Johnson, who's urged all adults to get a COVID booster jab amid fears that the Omicron variant will lead to many deaths.
Vicious jackals are posing one of the biggest threats to British livestock ever known. That's according to the Daily Star.
Well, there we go. Most of the papers leading on it. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has declared an Omicron emergency just hours after the UK's COVID alert level was raised to 4. We'll explain what that means in a second. In an address last night, he said it was clear that 2 doses of the vaccine are simply not enough to combat the Omicron variant and urged all adults to get that 3rd dose.
We're a great country. We have the vaccines to protect our people. So let's do it. Let's get boosted now. Get boosted now for yourself, for your friends and your family. Get boosted now to protect jobs and livelihoods across this country. Get boosted now to protect our NHS, our freedoms and our way of life.
Well, booster jabs will be offered to everyone over 18 in England from this week. The target is to have everyone who wants an extra vaccination jabbed by the new year. GB News East of England reporter Amelia Harper joins us now from Hertfordshire, one of the mass vaccination centres delivering the jabs. Amelia, good morning to you. Tell us what was announced last night and what it means for us all.
Well, places like the mass vaccination centre behind me are going to be incredibly busy until the end of the year after Boris Johnson's announcement last night. He said that all over 18s will be offered a COVID-19 booster jab by the end of the year over what he is calling a tidal wave of COVID cases, being that the Omicron variant. That target was originally actually going to be in January, but it's been moved forward over concern about Omicron. Boris Johnson saying in that press conference that cases are doubling of the variant every 2 days. It means that over 18s in England will be able to book that jab this week, provided that they are 3 months on from their 2nd dose. And Boris Johnson also warned last night that some medical appointments will have to be postponed to make way for this booster rollout, emergency booster rollout, that is. But how is this going to happen? Well, 42 military planning teams are going to be rolled out across every region. The rollout is also going to be sped up in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland as well, working with those devolved administrations. Vaccine sites will be open for longer. More vaccine sites will be opened. And Boris Johnson said that thousands of volunteers are going to be trained as part of this absolutely mammoth effort. It's something like 22 million vaccines that are going to be needed over the next 18 days until the end of that year to reach the target. But this has all come, of course, just hours after that COVID alert level was raised after recommendations by the 4 chief medical officers from 3 to 4. That's the second highest level, and the last time we were at this place in terms of the levels was in May. And it basically means, according to the government guidance, that transmission in communities is high and there is pressure being placed on health services. But what is happening with these Omicron cases? Well, it's only 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks, since we saw those first 2 cases arrive in the UK linked to travel from South Africa, one in Brentwood in Essex and the other in Nottingham. Of course, contact testing was underway, but it's spread a lot since then. The UK, since Sunday, we'll hear today's figures later on, but has recorded an additional 1,239 Omicron cases. Now, this takes the total number of this variant in terms of cases in the UK to 3,137. Now let's look at what it was on Saturday. That number was 1,898. That is a 65% increase over 24 hours, essentially, and this is why they are concerned. But it is worth noting that with any of these COVID figures, the actual figures for this variant are likely to be much higher, because these are the only ones that are going recorded. Boris Johnson has confirmed that the first patients with coronavirus of the Omicron variant are now being treated in hospitals. It is worth noting, though, that when the Education Secretary Nadeem Zahawi came on to news programmes, he said it was with the variant, not because of the variant. It probably doesn't mean too much, but it's just worth noting that small nuance in the language there. There haven't been reports of any deaths, though, but I think it's worth saying that looking at that press conference last night, there was a clear sense of concern about this new variant. His message at the end was almost like a call to arms with a "Get Boosted Now" slogan. They've already rolled out over 23 million booster vaccines, but they clearly feel that is not enough to tackle what scientists are predicting could be a wave of Omicron infections in the new year. And I think I'll just end on this. What was quite interesting, and I think this is possibly where politics snuck its way into the public health messaging, was when Boris Johnson said, "Get boosted to protect our way of life," perhaps taking aim at those over 60 Tory rebels who are set to try to block those Plan B COVID restrictions in Tuesday's vote.
Amelia, so, normally everyone's sort of slowing down up until Christmas. This is completely the opposite, the ramp up. How is this target going to be reached? We know the army could be involved.
Absolutely. Well, they are ramping up thousands. Boris Johnson said they're going to train thousands more volunteers. 42 extra military teams will be rolled out in the regions across England. So that is how they're going to do it physically, basically, Rosie, with a lot more manpower. But there is concern, clearly, about this Omicron variant and where we are going to be in the new year. We heard that tone of urgency in Boris Johnson's press conference. But I think it's worth saying that there currently aren't any plans to vaccinate children. There had been some rumours in some papers that there had been plans to vaccinate primary age school children under 12, but Education Secretary Nadeem Zahawi saying that is not going to happen.
Amelia, thank you very much. Amelia Harper there for us live this morning.
Now, it's 10 minutes past 8. Let's give you an overview of what else is happening. And French fishermen are set to carry out a blockade of crucial ports in a bid to try to spoil some of Christmas. The planned blockade would disrupt our supply chains in the busy festive season. It's the latest move in a long-running dispute between the UK and France over fishing licences. The French feel entitled to the same pre-Brexit fishing rights in UK waters that they're now being denied. Previous moves from the French include a threat to cut off power to the UK Channel Islands.
The travel red list will reportedly be scrapped as soon as this week. According to the Mail on Sunday, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps convinced his colleagues it should be replaced with testing for the fully vaccinated. The return of the red list 2 weeks ago was met with widespread criticism, with travellers needing to quarantine at a hotel at a cost of £2,285 per person for 10 days.
The Welsh Health Minister says new restrictions will likely be imposed in the next few weeks to try to help deal with the Omicron variant of coronavirus. Eluned Morgan says the government wants to act proportionally, but a spike in cases is expected quickly. Well, the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, warned Omicron could lead to large numbers of people being in hospital.
Northern Ireland's COVID certification scheme is set to become legally enforceable from today. The scheme requires people to prove COVID status to gain entry to a range of hospitality venues and large events. It was introduced last month with a 2-week grace period. Patrons wishing to access nightclubs, pubs, restaurants and other licensed premises will need to provide proof of vaccination or a negative lateral flow test result.
Now, in America, the Kentucky governor says morgues in the US town of Mayfield are struggling to keep up with the number of victims. It's after a series of powerful tornadoes ripped through the state. More than 100 people are feared dead across 6 states. At least 80 were killed in Kentucky in what's been described as one of the largest tornado outbreaks in US history.
Now, some MPs are calling on the government to rethink its plans to require voters to show photo ID at polling stations. The Commons Constitutional Affairs Committee says the move is likely to reduce turnout and make it more difficult to vote and should not move ahead without further research into how it will affect different groups. But the government says the move is necessary to protect elections from potential voter fraud.
Now, in sport, Formula One officials have rejected 2 protests from Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes team after Max Verstappen won a dramatic Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. The result secured then the Dutchman's first World Championship. Hamilton had led from the start, but Red Bull's Verstappen was able to overtake him in the final lap. Mercedes intends to appeal the verdict.
And entertainment news, Emmerdale actor Danny Miller has been crowned the winner of ITV's I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. He beat fellow finalists, actors Simon Gregson and the singer Frankie Bridge, to be crowned the King of the Castle. Miller described winning as the best thing that's ever happened to me, other than the birth of his son Albert 3 weeks before the show began.
Whoops. Let's look at the weather. Today's going to be cloudy in the south.
What was it like in his household this morning?
I don't know. A mixture of emotions.
Chilly, I'd imagine. You might want to go back to Wales.
Well, there's going to be persistent outbreaks of rain in Wales.
You get on with the weather, sorry.
The north will stay drier with sunny spells and a few showers in the west. It is feeling mild.
So, Prime Minister Boris Johnson could face the biggest rebellion from his MPs yet during tomorrow's vote to pass new COVID measures into law this week. The BBC estimates that around 60 Tory MPs will oppose the measure, which will necessitate proof of vaccination for entry to large venues.
Well, government sources told the BBC the introduction of Plan B measures for England will be divided into 3 separate votes on Tuesday. Plan B is expected to become law as Labour is backing the government.
Well, let's talk about this with Albi Amankona, who's the co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
How big a deal is this? Is this a rebellion that will cause the Prime Minister huge problems?
It's not going to cause the Prime Minister too much of a problem because, of course, the bills have got Labour's support. And that's what is the most interesting thing about this story. It's definitely uncomfortable for a Conservative government with such a big majority to need to get legislation through with Labour support and not the support of their own MPs.
Uncomfortable is playing it down a little bit. He's not just leaning on Labour, he's reliant on them.
He's 100% reliant on Labour to pass this legislation through the House of Commons tomorrow on Tuesday. Because actually, as of this morning, I think it's just over 70 Conservative MPs have been saying they're going to rebel on this bill. And it's, of course, led by Steve Baker, the Deputy Chair of the COVID Recovery Group.
Tell me how you really feel about this, because after the horrendous fortnight that the Conservatives have had, the government has had and Boris Johnson has had, is there a tipping point and are we approaching it, or is everybody overblowing just how much pressure there is on Boris Johnson at the moment?
There is definitely a lot of pressure on Boris Johnson at the moment, but I don't think it's going to result in the end of his premiership. What will be really interesting to watch out for this week will, of course, be the results of the by-election in North Shropshire later on this week, which is, of course, as a result of the Patterson scandal. Now, if the Prime Minister's antics over the last couple of weeks causes us to lose that by-election, then I think there could be some problems, but there's no indication of that being a problem at the moment.
Do you have confidence in Boris Johnson as Prime Minister and as leader of the Conservatives?
I do have confidence in Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, despite what has happened, and it's been a very difficult couple of months for the Conservative Party. I've been on this show a number of times explaining that it has been difficult. But overall, if we look at the last 2 years of Boris Johnson's premiership, we got a thumping majority 2 years ago yesterday. We had a very successful vaccine rollout. We've got the biggest investment going into the railways since the 1800s. Yes, there have been problems, and we cannot forget those. But overall, there have been some huge achievements of this government. And actually, in the way that we've dealt with COVID in this country, we're not an outlier in concerns to the rest of Europe, are we? All European leaders have performed quite similarly. So I don't think he's done exponentially badly compared to other leaders.
You used an interesting phrase a little earlier. You said the Prime Minister's antics. Is there a real presentation problem now for the government because of those antics, the behaviour of Boris Johnson, the parties, the controversy, the forgetting his lines? There are so many things over the recent weeks which have just made people question his fitness to be Prime Minister.
They have made people question his fitness to be Prime Minister, and that's illustrated by the polling that we've seen over the weekend. I think it's all one where Labour had a 9-point lead. A 9-point lead over a Conservative government with an 80-seat majority. That's not a good thing. And as I said, that's not because of bad policy decisions. It's mostly because of bad reactions to events. So what I want to see next year is the Prime Minister and indeed the government and the Conservative Party get a much better handle of events so we can focus on delivering on the needs of the British people instead of having to put out fires that we ourselves light.
What does that actually mean? Putting the needs of the British people first. Could Boris Johnson just come clean, tell the truth, be transparent, show everyone he has got credibility?
Yes, I think it does mean reacting to events in a much more open and honest way. I think had we just seen the honesty that the British people have been craving over the past couple of weeks and the past couple of months with the parties, with the Patterson scandal, I don't think they would have turned into as big a scandals as they have become.
So do you think Boris Johnson's dishonest?
I think that there are clearly instances over the past couple of months where situations could have been handled much better. The Prime Minister has said that himself.
But Albie, the problem is he's launched inquiries, and all that does is kick this into the... Well, it's not very long grass. We're only weeks away. Is it this whole dead cat everybody talks about, that you create diversions that stop people thinking about the real mistakes that have been made? At some point, this is all coming home to roost, and he's almost there.
Look, the Cabinet Secretary is running an investigation into the Downing Street and Whitehall parties, and we'll find out the outcomes of those investigations in the days and weeks to come. And I just hope, once we find out the answers as to what happens, we see some disciplinary action for those who need the disciplinary action to be taken on. And then we get the answers that the British people need, and then we can focus in the new year on the priorities of the British people. What we're not talking about this week, of course, is inflation. We're not talking about sluggish economic growth. These are the things that the Prime Minister and the government needs to be focusing on, not on these scandals.
Would you prefer a leader of the Conservative Party where you didn't, and other people who support the Conservative Party, didn't have to defend the integrity of the person at the helm?
I want a leader of the Conservative Party that can deliver for the people of Britain and deliver big election wins. And we just have to wait to see whether or not that's something Boris Johnson can do at the next general election. I believe that he can.
If not him, who?
That is not a question at the moment, Simon, that anyone is... That's not a conversation within the Conservative Party. There's lots of speculation in the media. Will it be Rishi Sunak? Will it be Liz Truss? It's all a waste of time. The Prime Minister isn't going anywhere. Everyone in the Conservative Party wants the Prime Minister to succeed. The country needs the Prime Minister to succeed. We don't have time at the moment to have a leadership election. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Now is not the time, and there's no vacancy at number 10.
There we are. Albie, it's always good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It is 20 minutes past 8. You're with the Great British Breakfast, and coming up here on the programme, we're looking at the impact of Plan B. What will it have on business after the weather?
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Read by me, so set your videos. Here we go. Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking mild but cloudy in the south. However, in the north, brighter with showers. Let's take a look at the details. This is the southwest of England. It's rather cloudy as we head towards lunchtime. With some patchy drizzle over the hills. It'll be very mild, though, with temperatures in the low teens. Moving further east towards southeast England and East Anglia. We're likely to see a few breaks in the clouds, allowing some...
Albie, thank you so much. You are an absolute...
The west in Wales. Have a rather wet day with the rain turning heavy and persistent at times, especially across the northwest of the country. The wet weather will also affect northern parts of the Midlands, but further to the south it's going to be dry with perhaps a few breaks developing during the afternoon. It will feel mild though, with temperatures reaching 13 Celsius. Northern England will start the day largely dry and bright, but the band of rain will gradually spread northwards during the day, although the far north may still stay dry until after dark. Scotland is going to see a day of sunny spells and blustery showers. However, after a very windy start in the north, winds will gradually ease as the day goes on. And moving across now to Northern Ireland, it's here where we'll see the best of the sunshine today with just the odd shower possible. Temperatures here reaching 8 Celsius. So it's going to remain largely dry across the south as we head towards dusk, with the band of rain slowly moving north. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
25 minutes past 8 here on the Great British Breakfast.
I've learned that her real name is Rosamond this morning, and she's just said it's always good to have a name in case you're Prime Minister. Is that really? What? Okay. Well, no, let us know if you do that.
I have no political ambitions.
That you would use if you were Prime Minister. Interesting. I'm learning much.
Well, let's learn about interest rates. The Bank of England may hold off from raising interest rates once more this coming Thursday on the account of the new Omicron variant and Plan B restrictions. Economic growth could be impacted, as with the possibility of future restrictions. Experts say the bank may take a wait-and-see approach to see how markets and spending will be affected. New restrictions globally could also threaten to disrupt supply chains and reduce spending in shops, creating, of course, wider economic uncertainty.
Gerard Lyons is the Chief Economic Strategist at NetWealth and joins us now. Gerard, good morning to you.
Good morning.
We've got predictions about the Bank of England wrong for the last 2 months, aren't we? Does anybody really have a grip on what's going on?
Well, it's possible to have a grip on what's going on by looking at the data. But if we look at the Bank of England, in my view, should raise interest rates this week. In all likelihood, they probably won't because of the latest worries about the pandemic. So those concerns are understandable. But the reality of the situation is that UK interest rates of only 0.1% are far too low, given that the economy is trending higher despite the pandemic, and given that inflation is above 4% now and could easily head to above 7% by next spring. So the Bank of England should act. But of course, the worry at the moment, at the beginning of this week, is the immediate economic impact from the pandemic. And that will probably weigh on the Bank of England's thinking when they meet this Thursday.
Yeah, and critically, of course, as well, the shift in England today to work from home. How do you think that's going to impinge on the economy? Can we tell?
Well, we can tell. There are two impacts from the latest actions. First, there's a direct impact because of the government's measures and restrictions, in particular telling people to work from home. And there's an indirect impact as the latest pandemic variant impacts both business and consumer confidence. The challenge is that we can't quantify fully the impact of both of those factors. But in qualitative terms, partly because we've seen evidence over the last 18 months, partly because we know how this feeds through. In qualitative terms, we can say that there will be a hit to the economy. It will be a temporary hit, but it will impact some sectors particularly hard, such as hospitality, restaurants, etc. So there will be a temporary hit to the economy. The economy was already recovering. In November, the economy looked like it was benefiting from an improvement in business and consumer confidence. Last week, we had data that showed the economy only picked up slightly in October. But in all likelihood, the economy looked like it would return to its pre-pandemic level of last February before the end of this year. But the pandemic's latest variant will probably knock the economy in December, in January, possibly into February as well. So there will be a temporary hit to the economy, but that should not result in permanent changes to policy. So we need to weather the storm and hopefully move as quickly as possible through these restrictions.
Yeah. So some optimism there, but as we know, as we've said for years, if there's one thing the city hates, it's uncertainty. Have we ever seen such an uncertain period as we're in now? Because we know we could be heading into something bad, but there's no sign of us coming out of it at this stage.
Well, I think there is a sign that we're coming out of it. The high rates of vaccinations in the UK and the boosters suggest that the UK should have a high degree of protection from this latest variant. The challenge, of course, is that globally, many parts of the world have not been fully vaccinated. So in all likelihood, we will see further variants come through over next year. The point is that we have to live with COVID. That's the point that many businesses are making. So you're right, there is uncertainty. That doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help it make it easier for planning, and naturally it hits some sectors of the economy, as I've said, particularly hard. But in terms of the policy environment, what we need to do is look through this. Taxes, unfortunately, are going up next spring. They need to start being reduced once the economy returns to some sort of normality. In terms of the Bank of England, may be sort of humming and hawing over what to do this week. But I think it's quite clear that the trend for UK interest rates needs to be higher, albeit at a gradual pace.
Thank you so much, Gerard, for joining us this morning on the programme. Really appreciate your insight and analysis.
Now, you're watching The Great British Breakfast. Coming up, the Formula One Grand Finale was wrapped up in Abu Dhabi, but marred in controversy. We'll have more on that in a moment.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching The Great British Breakfast. It's just after 8:30.
Now, new Azuma train services launched this morning between Middlesbrough and London. London North Eastern Railway, or LNER, says this is the first wave of new services between Teesside and London. The very first train left shortly after 7 o'clock this morning, and our North East of England reporter Rachel Sweeney was there to see it off live for us at Middlesbrough train station this morning. Rachel, a very good morning to you. It's been a significant development for people in the region.
It is a huge development. It is so crucial and so important that we are better connected to the capital. This is the first direct train from Middlesbrough to London in 30 years, 3 decades. So people here are absolutely over the moon. This can only bring more opportunities to us economically. Like we've seen in this area, record business deals from around the world, record investments. So we do want to be better connected. We do want to be even more attractive to people bringing investment to this area, and more connectivity to London can only better our growth. The Teesside Freeport as well, that brings business in from all over the world, and this rail link is only going to better that growth. Now, you should have seen the train arrive this morning. The fanfare was fantastic. We had fireworks, so many cheers. It was really brilliant to see. Now, this train is based on the Japanese bullet train. It's fantastic. It's so fast. It came speeding through. Everybody was very excited. Now, this train is going to run Monday to Friday, straight down to London. It's going to also include Thornaby, and on the way back up northbound, that will bring in York as well. Now, although it's a very exciting time for people here, we do have to question why this has taken so long. Labour MP Andy MacDonald says he's been asking for this service since 2012. Maybe it's because the government has a treasury hub in the area now in Darlington, so LNER is government owned. Perhaps it's more in their interest now to have better links to London, or is it part of the levelling up agenda? Well, this is something that I put to LNER Managing Director David Horn.
Well, the case for the service is improving all the time with the investment and the real shift towards relocation towards the north, of course. Physically, there have been works taking place at the station to accommodate the new service. And of course, it's taken a while for us to get our Azuma trains into full service. The Mayor has made investment of over £22 million into the station to enable this service to start.
It's in the government's interest now, isn't it, to really pay attention to this part of the world. It's really up and coming, there's so much investment, and now, of course, the Treasury.
Yes, indeed. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the Tees Valley and on the broader northeast, of course. The case is really strong. You know, there's parts of the country that are overheating in terms of the economy, so this is about rebalancing activity, but it's also, of course, about fundamentally providing a better service by train that's environmentally friendly, that enables people to connect between the towns and the cities across the country.
Now, as well as the economic benefits, there are also environmental benefits. The new trains will run using overhead electric wires between London and Northallerton, and then it'll be diesel powered to and from Borough. It's called bio mode, and it will be better for the environment. I want to end on a fun fact for you. Azuma means east in Japanese. All of the trains are modelled on the Japanese bullet train. Now, this area has been firmly on the up for some time. It is growing, it is developing, it is really thriving right now, and this is just further proof.
Isn't it just? And fantastic news for the region too. Rachel, thank you very much.
Now, it's gone 25 minutes to 9. This year is set to be the strongest for mortgage lending since 2007, following, of course, you remember the stamp duty holiday and a wave, of course, of home workers moving from cities. UK Finance has said £316 billion of home loans have been handed out this year. That's up by nearly a third compared with 2020. And house purchases have been the main driver of lending in 2021, while homeowner remortgaging activity has been down slightly on last year.
Well, Commercial Director of Property Lender MT Finance, Gareth Lewis, joins us now. Gareth, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Given everything that's gone on over the last couple of years, that's a bit of a surprise, isn't it? You'd have thought people would hold back from big investments, personal investments like this.
Yeah, you could say that would have been a natural thought process for people to actually pull back from it. But I think what you found is consumer confidence in the desire to transact in property was still there and was still strong. And I think, you know, couple that with low interest rates, so the cost of acquisition being low from that perspective, I think it does fuel their confidence in the right way.
You know, today marks again the start for so many people working from their kitchen desk or, you know, even their bedroom in some cases. This return to working from home, what impact has that had on the housing market? People just tempted to get the space while they can.
Yeah, I think what the pandemic definitely brought was a sentiment towards people realising that a home wasn't just somewhere to lay your head. It was a usable space. It was something you needed for your family, for your lifestyle. And then obviously where you were located was a strong driver to that as well, because ultimately, you wanted green space. You wanted to be able to have that ability to, enjoy your time within your home because you were spending more time there. And I think, obviously, that's what's going to be seen off the back of this work from home again. People are going to be looking for usable space, office space within their properties, or just, feeling comfortable and comfort taken from the fact you have a garden. So, there is that sentiment that will always come through.
Now, there's always a but, and the but in this case is we've got the Bank of England possibly thinking about putting interest rates up at some point. We've got inflation on the rise. Are people jumping quickly into the housing market while they feel it's appropriate before they know it won't be?
Yes, possibly. I think there's going to be some caution that's going to be had in the coming months by the nature of what's going on at this moment in time. The interest rates have been suppressed for so long that the cost of money has been so cheap for a huge amount of generations. So they have taken advantage of that where there was an opportunity. But I think what you'll see now is where interest rates may well rise, the cost of borrowing will go up. There is that squeeze from inflation and the economic uncertainty that brings as well. You may well find that people just hedge their bets a little bit more from that type of thing. I think the other big thing for this is the supply. The ability for property to go on the market, people actually looking to sell properties and stimulate the chains, as it were. So new homeowners, first-time buyers, smaller properties that maybe weren't going on the market as much. I think there is a big stimulus that has to come via that side as well as an age-old point.
Gareth, thank you very much for talking to us. Gareth Lewis, Commercial Director of Property Lender MT Finance. Appreciate your time.
Now, more than 500,000 learner drivers are waiting to take their test because of a huge backlog. For large parts of the pandemic, learners were banned from taking their driving qualification. Now, the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency has been criticised for not doing more to reduce that long queue to test centres across the country.
Well, we can find out more. Will Hollis is our East Midlands reporter, joining us live from a test centre in Loughborough. Will, what is causing that backlog and what efforts are underway to try and clear it?
Good morning. Yeah, there are a lot of young and older drivers, learner drivers that are going in and out of this Loughborough test centre today. They've been able to do so since back in April when the government allowed tests to resume after that second lockdown, the winter lockdown that we saw earlier in this year. 500,000 people, though, in the figures obtained by the AA Driving School from the DVSA, the Driver and Vehicle Standards Agency, 500,000 people are still waiting to take their test. It's around about half of a year, 24 weeks that many people are waiting. It's a really difficult problem for the DVSA to solve, and they are trying to solve it, but they are certainly being criticised, as you say, Rosie, particularly by the AA Driving School. I've got a quote here from the managing director. Driving instructors adapted to make lessons safer when restrictions are lifted, but the DVSA has still not caught up enough to meet demand and questions, and questions need to be asked about what support they can get to ensure we don't end up in the same position if restrictions do come back. That's one of the big fears. 500,000 people waiting. If we do go into another national lockdown, God forbid, I know that a lot of people would find that really difficult. It would add to that load. It would add to that ever-growing list of people waiting to take the test. As I said, the DVSA says they are trying to do a number of things to reduce that list, to reduce that list of people that are waiting to take their test. Some of the measures that I've been told are that they're doing weekend and bank holiday testing, also recruiting extra examiners and returning and encouraging learners to only take their test when they are absolutely ready. I'll come back to that in a moment. One person that I spoke to who is a driving instructor said the main problem with it is, although there are spaces being made available, more opportunity to take the test, there simply aren't the vehicles or the examiners. As I said, one of the things that the DVSA is trying to do is get retired examiners back into the industry, employ more examiners to get into the industry. But without the vehicles that many learners learn to drive in, the vehicles that belong to the instructors, it's just simply not possible. And those vehicles are helping to train the generation of drivers that have missed out on that period of the pandemic in 2020, early 2021, when they weren't allowed to test. So it's a much bigger problem than seems to be one that can be solved with just adding a few extra examiners. One of the things that the DVSA has said in relation to this is that they are doing all that they can to provide as many tests as possible, but people really shouldn't be going for their tests unless they are absolutely ready and instructors are sure that they will pass. Now, it's about 49% of people that do take their test that actually pass it, so it's a 50-50 pass-fail. It has gone up, though, since 5 years ago in 2015 when it was about 45%. So it seems that something is better because of this encouragement, but the problem certainly isn't going to be going away anytime soon.
Well, thank you very much. Kevin saying, I'm a driving instructor. I can assure you the standard of instruction is not very high. Then goes through a list of why the theory test is not fit for purpose. The whole thing is a complete mess, he says. We end up with some highly inappropriate people on the roads. Let us know your view. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yeah, in the pass rate's only about 49%, so that sounds a little bit...
What we haven't got time to tell you is what happened on her driving test and how she forgot to start the car and wondered why it didn't move off.
I did pass, amazingly.
Well, that is amazing.
Without starting the engine initially, but that's OK. We'll move on from that. More entertaining than my driving test saga.
This isn't.
Strictly Come Dancing. Officially revealed the three celebrities heading into next weekend's big final after saying goodbye to Rhys Stevenson. Rhys and his partner, they're not in the semi-final. They were in the dreaded dance-off, and it was described as one of the most amazing dance-offs ever by Craig Revel Horwood. Well, what will be happening in the final? Let's find out now. Entertainment reporter Hayley Palmer joins us now. We hear a lot of a lot about, it was the best ever, it was the worst ever, the standards getting higher and higher. Was it a fierce fight for the final?
Rosie, for me, it was just a wonderful final. I mean, I have never known a semi-final like it. And I saw that Ryland tweeted, I just don't want anyone to go out. And I felt the same as well. I was so gripped. I felt all of the couples had really something to give. I liked pretty much every single one of their dances. So it's such an exciting time. And I cannot wait for the final this Saturday, the 18th of December at 7 o'clock. Cancel all your plans because this is going to be absolutely nail-biting.
Rose is come on, we all know who's going to win it.
Well, I've got to say the bookies' favourites are Rose, odds of 1 to 5, and AJ's second favourite to win, odds of 7 to 1. I personally think it will be Rose, just putting it out there now. What do you think, Rosie?
Well, oh my goodness, you're asking me to say what my predictions would be. She has had a remarkable time on the programme and has also done so much more, which Strictly does often do, in terms of raising awareness, championing other campaigns outside of just dancing, hasn't she?
Yes, she's just wonderful, and I feel like the public really are behind her. So this Saturday, it is going to be exciting. I mean, all of them at the weekend. I mean, you had the Argentine tango that Rose and Gio did. I felt like it was a Debbie McGee moment where you just go, wow, that's the one. And for me, the couple's choice with the boys, John and Johannes, I was just blown away by that. And AJ, I cannot get over her back bend. How has she got those legs and the back bend? I never know. But yeah, so bring it on this Saturday, 7 to 9 o'clock. It really is the place to be.
Yeah, but my prediction is Rose not only wins, that moment where the music stopped, that's going to be the television moment of the year. I will almost put money on that. That was a heart stopper, wasn't it?
It really was, yes. So, like I say, I just don't know. You can't call it. It could be any of them. But I just know it's going to be such a close final. So watch this space. I will report back.
One final that's already over. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Not King of the Jungle, but King of the Castle. What did you make?
Yes, Danny Miller crowned king. I mean, what a final it was. We had Danny, Simon and Frankie each had a trial that was just, oh my goodness, I couldn't even do any of them. Danny, you had the helmet with the bugs. I mean, to me, that was the worst one, so he definitely deserved to be king on the back of that. Simon was the eating challenge. He made it look so easy. And Frankie in the coffin with about 40-odd snakes over her. I don't know how she'd ever get over that, but each of them deserved to be in the final. And there is actually going to be a follow-up show on Wednesday night, I'm a Celebrity Legends of the Castle special with interviews with them once they've left, because I'm going to be lost without the jungle and Strictly. I don't know what I'm going to do. So that's something to tune into if you're like me and you're really going to miss it.
What would it be like to work somewhere with 40 snakes in it?
One thing I wanted to ask you about is that Ant and Dec have got quite political this year, haven't they? There's been lots of reference to the party.
Yes, I saw that. But you know what? I think it was all in good humour. And I was reading some of the tweets that were coming through. And I think people actually really enjoyed that. We love Ant and Dec. They're legends. And you know what? They can get away with it.
So much for talking to us. So there we go. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Comes to close and Strictly
Thank you, Simon and Rosie.
Week to go. Thanks, Hayley.
Still think Formula One was the best thing at the weekend.
Well, let's find out a bit more. Cricket first.
Oh, OK. England bowler Stuart Broad has said he's disappointed to be left out of England's crushing 9-wicket defeat in the Ashes opener. Australia eased to the 20 runs required in the last innings and lost just 1 wicket to top off what was a convincing display. Of course, there's one other sporting story. Max Verstappen was eventually able to celebrate his maiden Formula One World Championship after 2 appeals from Mercedes were rejected by the race stewards following the Dutchman's controversial last-lap victory at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Mihir Bose is a sports writer and broadcaster and joins us now. Very good morning to you. At what point did Mercedes just say, OK, we lost?
Well, that's difficult because actually on Thursday is the gala dinner where the award is made. So to a certain extent, Mercedes is part of the fabric of motor racing, but also Mercedes has to consider if they lose this, and it looks like they will lose, there are financial implications, there are other implications, and clearly the decision of the race director was, one must say, and you don't have to be British, you don't have to be a fan of Lewis Hamilton to say it was a bit very questionable what he did. So I think Mercedes will, take it to court because they will want to prove that this was a wrong decision. But it is still a very tricky question as to what exactly will happen.
Nevertheless, what an amazing afternoon for Formula One.
Absolutely. And, you know, if you like, in footballing terms, this is one team in injury time ahead. An event happens that concerns neither teams, and then you have a penalty shootout created so the last lap produces a race between the two, either of whom could have won, and one of them wins. You know, you couldn't have contrived it better, if you like. This was show business coming into sport.
We loved it.
But you sound a little bit cross about that.
Well, I'm cross because I personally think sport should be decided on the sporting field. It should not be decided in a court of law. It should not be decided because that is what sport is about. Sport is about theatre. Sport is about magic. Sport is the only thing, I'm forgetting Strictly Come Dancing, sport is the only thing that makes us believe in myth and magic, that anybody can win, the complete outsider. Even England will one day win a trophy in football. You know, you can dream the impossible. That is why sport is important.
Yeah, and they may win an Ashes test after defeat in Brisbane. Let's just talk about what went wrong. I mean, apart from Joe Root, it was pretty miserable. No Broad, no Anderson. That's got to change, hasn't it?
It has to change. And I think that Simon, you've rightly hit the nail on the head. The problem with England, I've said this for a long time, has been the England batting. Joe Root is a marvellous batsman, one of the all-time great batsmen. But you can't rely on one batsman. If you look at what happened at Brisbane, England were recovering. England were getting into a position where they might have saved the test or at least tested Australia. On the fourth morning, Joe Root gets out and the rest of the side just back in. And I think they have to need to look at their batting. Ben Stokes has come back after a long time, and I'm not quite sure how match-ready he is. It's clearly not very match-ready. And if you don't, if you're having Ben Stokes on your side, and that is, of course, a great thing to have, but if he's not Ben Stokes firing on all cylinders in the way he did at Headingley during the last Ashes series and won that test match, I think you have a problem. So you perhaps Stuart Broad should have played, but certainly the batting needs to come up with answers.
Do you have any sympathy with the England side?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, if you look at it, we are playing in a pandemic. They are in a bubble. I mean, that has affected all teams, but they've gone to Australia, which has some very, very strict conditions, and they've had no preparation time. If you look at past Ashes series, England have done well. When going into the Ashes, they've had some preparation time. They've had some time to play proper matches. There has been a sort of inter-England match between the team and the Lions, which even then was affected by rain. So I think that has been very unfair on England, but then again, that is what sport is. It deals the cards out, and sometimes the cards don't come out in your favour.
What would you expect to see change in the next test?
I think Bairstow may come in as a batsman. I think certainly Burns' position looks very, very rocky. He failed, and I think maybe the opening batting will change. And certainly, I would have thought that either Anderson or Broad, or perhaps both of them, would come back. They have been the two great bowlers, opening bowlers for England. I think one of them will certainly come back. And I think, of course, there is the playing of the spinner Leach, who got absolutely hammered out of the attack. So I think that will have to be looked at. I can't see Leach playing in the next test.
Can they claw it back, do you think?
I think they can. I don't think we should lose optimism. I mean, if you go back through Ashes history, and I'm old enough to remember a test in 1958. I know, Simon, I'm very old. You're raising your eyebrows, but I am.
It's lucky we're friends.
We are, of course, friends. But, England have lost badly and then come back. I think this is where the mettle of Root will show. Because, you are captaining in Australia. There's nothing harder than captaining an England side in Australia, and this is where Root is captain, not as batsman. That is where he will have to earn his keep.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'll be talking to you again. Mihir, always great to see you. Thank you very much, Mihir Bose.
It's been a bit of a whirlwind of sport. How are you feeling about the Formula One?
Well, no, I've gotten into so much trouble.
Why?
I mean, because I was supporting Max Verstappen beforehand, and
yes.
People saying you traitor. I mean, Christian Horner and what Red Bull have done is amazing, and I've supported them.
So what was your reaction in that final lap?
Well, it was the most thrilling lap I've ever seen on Formula One. It was stunning, but I can utterly understand why people got cross. But, you know...
Maybe the sport needed some showbiz.
Well, it's got the showbiz. And Lewis Hamilton, on the team radio, when he heard that Verstappen had gone in to have his tyres changed, was sort of going, guys, what's happening? You could sense his frustration. Mm-hmm. But Mercedes played by the rules. The trouble is the rules were changed, and I get that. But it was just stunning. And I feel for Lewis Hamilton. I feel for Lewis for the controversy. But Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton are today, presumably at their homes in Monaco, rather enjoying the results for both of them.
Don't go anywhere. That's it from us today. Next will be the briefing with Darren McCaffrey. We'll be back at 6 tomorrow. See you then.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Well, let's look ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking mild but cloudy in the south. However, in the north, brighter with showers. Let's take a look at the details. And there, in the southwest of England, rather cloudy as we head towards lunchtime with some patchy drizzle over the hills. It's going to be very mild, though, with temperatures in the low teens. Moving further east towards southeast England and East Anglia, we're likely to see a few breaks in the clouds, allowing some sunny interludes to develop. Wales, however, will have a rather wet day, with the rain turning heavy and persistent at times, especially across the northwest of the country. The wet weather will also affect northern parts of the Midlands, but further south it will be dry, with perhaps a few breaks developing during the afternoon. Feel mild here, with temperatures reaching 13 degrees Celsius. Northern England will start the day largely dry, but the band of rain will gradually spread northwards during the day, although the far north may stay dry until after dark. Let's move up to Scotland. That's going to see a day of sunny spells and blustery showers. However, after a very windy start in the north, winds will gradually ease as the day goes on. So move across to Northern Ireland. It's here where we'll see the best of the sunshine, with just the odd shower possible there. Temperatures, they're going to reach 8 degrees Celsius. So it'll remain largely dry across the south as we head towards dusk, with the band of rain only slowly moving north. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the...
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email